I stood there, a silent observer in the vivid tableau of the past. Before me, Caleb appeared as he did in ages long past, adorned in clothing that spoke of a different era. The realization washed over me. This was a scene from my past life. As my gaze shifted, I saw her, a woman who bore an uncanny resemblance to me. But there was a profound difference. Her essence carried a weight of sadness, an air of longing that transcended the ages. It was unmistakable. She was my past self. The sight sent a shiver down my spine. I watched, transfixed, as my past self and Caleb exchanged words. Their voices were like a distant echo, their conversation a dance of emotions, veiled in layers of time. It was a moment of connection, of shared history that stretched far beyond my current understanding. Questions swirled in my mind, each one begging to be answered. Who was this woman from my past life, and what had transpired between her and Caleb? The enigma of my existence deepened, and I yearned to unravel the threads of time that bound us together. I stood there, still a silent observer in the echo of time, as Caleb approached the past version of myself with a tenderness that took me by surprise. He looked at her with eyes filled with understanding and a depth of emotion that transcended the ages. It was our first meeting in this past life, and I could sense the profound connection that existed between them. Caleb spoke to the past Millie, his voice laced with a gentle comfort. I can see the pain in your eyes. You don't have to carry it alone. Her eyes, mirroring my own, glistened with unshed tears as she revealed her torment. I'm infertile, Caleb. A brutal attack left me barren. His response was immediate and heartfelt. I don't need an heir, Millie. I don't need anything more than you. The weight of his words hung in the air, filling the space with a poignant understanding. In that moment, I realized the depth of their connection, forged not only through love, but also through shared pain and a willingness to embrace each other's flaws and imperfections. As the scene unfolded before me, I couldn't help but be moved by the unconditional love they shared, even in the face of adversity. It was a love that transcended the boundaries of time and left an indelible mark on my soul, bridging the gap between my past and present selves. In the blink of an eye, the scene shifted, and I found myself transported to another vision, one filled with chaos and violence. The world around me was consumed by the horrors of battle, the air thick with the acrid scent of smoke and the haunting sounds of clashing swords and the screams of the wounded. Yet amidst the carnage, my past self and Caleb stood together, sharing a moment of laughter that defied the grim reality surrounding them. My past self wore armor that glistened in the dim light, and Caleb, standing beside her, looked every bit the valiant warrior. Their laughter, though incongruous in the midst of such devastation, was genuine and filled with a deep connection that transcended the chaos of war. It was a fleeting but profound glimpse into a time when they had fought side by side, their bond unbreakable, even in the face of danger. As I watched this vision unfold, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the resilience of their love, which had endured through countless trials and tribulations. The visions continued to unfold before me, each one revealing a different facet of my past life with Caleb. In the next scene, I found myself in a beautifully adorned Victorian-style house. The ambiance was one of elegance and opulence, with ornate furniture and rich tapestries adorning the walls. As I gazed around the room, Caleb entered, carrying my past self in his arms with a tenderness that was both touching and heartfelt. Their love was palpable, and the way he looked at her was filled with adoration and devotion. It was a scene of profound intimacy, one that spoke volumes about the depth of their connection. As they shared this tender moment, I couldn't help but feel a softening of my own emotions towards Caleb. Despite the tumultuous journey we had been on since my arrival in this world, witnessing these glimpses of our past together reminded me of the love that had once bound us. It was a love that transcended time and adversity, and it began to thaw the icy barrier of anger that had built up within me. I slowly began to regain consciousness, my head feeling heavy and my thoughts still swirling in a haze of memories and emotions. As my senses gradually returned, I realized I was lying down, and the soft murmurs of voices reached my ears. I blinked my eyes open, my vision slowly coming into focus. Ian, the therapist who had guided me through those intense visions of my past life with Caleb, was sitting nearby, his expression filled with concern. His words were soothing as he spoke to me, reassuring me that the discomfort I was feeling was a normal part of the hypnosis process and that it would subside with time. I groaned softly, my head throbbing with a dull ache, but I managed a weak nod of acknowledgement. It was as if I had just journeyed through time and emotions, and my physical body was struggling to catch up with the experiences my mind had gone through. Ian continued to offer words of comfort and support, and I began to take in my surroundings, a room that felt strangely both familiar and foreign. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions, but I couldn't deny that the hypnosis had brought me closer to understanding my past life and the complex relationship I had shared with Caleb. The soft morning light streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow across the room as I sat with Caleb, the questions swirling in my mind. We were in a small, cozy sitting area of the house, away from the prying eyes of the others, engaged in a quiet conversation that held layers of intrigue and curiosity. I gazed at Caleb, my eyes searching his for answers to the mysteries of my past life. "Caleb," I began cautiously, "what about your brother Ian? He seems distant, as if he doesn't quite like me." Caleb sighed, his eyes taking on a faraway look before returning to meet mine. "Ian is a complex person," he admitted, "but I assure you, he's trustworthy. In our past life, we were close friends, and he cared deeply for both of us." His words brought a faint sense of relief, though I still couldn't shake the unease that had settled within me. "I see," I replied, my voice soft. "I just have this vague memory of playing with a group of kids. Ian was there, wasn't he?" Caleb's eyes brightened with recognition. "Yes, he was. You and Ian used to have a lot of fun together. It was a simpler time filled with laughter and innocence." My heart warmed at the thought, a glimmer of my past life breaking through the fog of uncertainty. "I wish I could remember more," I confessed, a hint of frustration in my tone. Caleb reached out and gently touched my hand, his thumb caressing my skin in a soothing manner. "It will come back to you, Millie. Patience is key. And don't worry about Ian. Our relationship with him wasn't as close as it was with Ian. He seemed to keep his distance." As I absorbed Caleb's words, a myriad of emotions swirled within me. The fragments of memories and the complexities of my past life with these two brothers continued to elude me, like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle waiting to be assembled. The tranquility of our conversation was shattered when Tony burst into the room with a sense of urgency. "Caleb, Millie, you need to come outside," he exclaimed, his voice tinged with both awe and concern. Caleb and I exchanged quick glances, curiosity and trepidation mingling in our eyes. Without a moment's hesitation, we followed Tony outside, emerging into the bright daylight. What we saw above us was nothing short of astonishing. Dragons, magnificent and majestic, filled the sky. They soared with a grace that defied belief, their scales shimmering like jewels under the sun. Their sizes and shapes varied from sleek and elegant to colossal and imposing. It was a breathtaking sight that left me in awe, my heart pounding with both fear and wonder. But it wasn't just the dragons that captured our attention. The streets below were crowded with people, their heads bowed in reverence as they knelt before the awe-inspiring creatures. Their faces were filled with a mix of fear and reverence, and it was clear that this was an extraordinary event. Caleb and Tony exchanged serious glances, their expressions mirroring the weight of the situation. "This is unexpected," Caleb mused, his voice low. "The dragons, they must be here for the stone." Tony nodded in agreement, his eyes never leaving the dragons above. "Yes, but we also have to consider the possibility that one of them might have been responsible for Millie's death in her past life." The implications of Tony's words hung in the air, casting a shadow over our thoughts. As we stood there, gazing at the dragons that had descended upon our world, it was clear that the mysteries of our past lives were intertwined with these magnificent creatures. As the dragons filled the skies above, Caleb's voice held a note of caution as he instructed me to remain indoors until we could discern the intentions of these magnificent and awe-inspiring creatures. Nodding in agreement, I retreated back inside, leaving the scene of wonder and reverence behind. With the uncertainty of the moment hanging in the air, I decided to immerse myself in a book I had found earlier, one that offered glimpses into the enigmatic tapestry of my past life. The pages were filled with tales and names that struck a chord within me, reminding me of a world I had once known. My fingers traced the words, and my eyes drank in the stories of dragons, of love and loss, and of a connection that spanned time itself. As I read, my emotions swirled like a tempest within me. It was as if these words were unlocking doors to memories I had long forgotten or perhaps never knew I possessed. The room around me faded into obscurity as I was transported to another time and place, the lines between reality and dream blurring. In this dream, I walked through a vivid memory of my past life, and there, standing before me, was Ian. His presence was both familiar and disconcerting, a paradox of emotions stirring within me. We shared a connection, a bond that transcended the boundaries of time, and yet there was an air of mystery shrouding our relationship. In the dream, I witnessed a moment of shared laughter and camaraderie, a fleeting but profound connection between us. It was a glimpse into a world I had once inhabited, and it left me with a profound sense of longing and curiosity. As the dream slowly faded, I awoke with a jolt, my heart racing and my mind ablaze with questions. The dragons in the sky still loomed, their intentions unknown, but one thing was clear. I was on the precipice of discovering a truth that had been hidden from me for far too long. As the dragons soared majestically in the sky above, I found myself sitting with Caleb in the dimly lit living room. The awe-inspiring sight outside was juxtaposed with my lingering unease regarding Joshua, Caleb's brother. There was a gnawing suspicion that he might harbor ill feelings towards me, and I couldn't help but voice my concerns. "Caleb," I began cautiously, my gaze locked onto the dragons outside. "What about your brother Joshua? Do you think he has any reason to dislike me?" Caleb, his eyes thoughtful, turned to me with a reassuring smile. "Millie, you needn't worry about Joshua. He's a trustworthy and loyal friend, both in this life and your past one." I regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "In my past life? What do you mean?" With a gentle sigh, Caleb began to reveal the intricate threads of our past. "You and Joshua were childhood friends in your previous life. You shared countless adventures, laughter, and unforgettable moments together." His words struck a chord deep within me, resonating with a hidden part of my soul. I tried to grasp the idea of these shared memories from a life I couldn't remember, but there was an undeniable sense of longing and familiarity. But if that's the case, I pondered, why do I feel as though there might be unresolved issues between us? Something that lingers beneath the surface? Caleb's gaze softened as he considered my question. "The intricacies of past lives can be complex, Millie. Sometimes the bonds we share transcend time, and they are not without their challenges. But trust me when I say that Joshua cares deeply for you, just as he did in the life we once knew." As I sat in the cozy living room, surrounded by the enigmatic presence of dragons soaring above, a fleeting memory from my past life began to flicker within my consciousness. It was like grasping at the edges of a half-remembered dream. I spoke to Caleb, my voice carrying a tremor of uncertainty. "Caleb, I remember something. It's faint, but I was playing with a group of kids. Among them, there was a boy who felt important, someone I cared about deeply." Caleb's eyes brightened with understanding. "That's a memory from your past life, Millie. It sounds like you're recalling moments with Joshua and the other children. Your bond with Joshua was special, and those childhood memories are a testament to it." I couldn't help but feel a rush of emotions as fragments of the past began to reassemble in my mind. It was as if I was piecing together a puzzle with missing parts, each revelation drawing me closer to an intricate tapestry of experiences and connections. Curiosity gnawed at me, and I couldn't help but ask, what happened to Joshua after those carefree days? Did he stay with me? Caleb's expression became somber, and he took a moment before answering. Joshua, like many others of his generation, was drafted into service when he turned 18. He was conscripted to join the war against the dragons and had been away for a few years. The weight of his words settled upon me, and I contemplated the profound changes that time could bring. My memories were like fragments of a distant echo, and each revelation seemed to stir the waters of a deeper connection, one that spanned lifetimes. I had just settled into my thoughts about my past life when the sudden urgency in Tony's voice jolted me from my reverie. Without hesitation, I followed Caleb and Tony outside to witness a scene that defied all rational explanation. Dragons of all shapes and sizes filled the sky, their majestic wings casting shadows on the earth below. Some of these mythical creatures touched down near the house, their presence felt in the quaking ground beneath my feet. My heart raced as I took in the breathtaking spectacle, marveling at the diversity of these otherworldly beings. My curiosity and awe drove me to my room's balcony, where I could gain a better vantage point. From there, I could see the people in the street, men, women, and children, all kneeling with their heads bowed in reverence. It was as though they were paying homage to these enigmatic creatures. Caleb and Tony were engaged in conversation with the dragons. My eyes darted between them, trying to piece together the puzzle of this surreal encounter. Dragons, who I had once believed were mere legends, were now a living presence, and their intentions remained shrouded in mystery. As the conversation between Caleb, Tony, and the dragons continued, I could sense the skepticism that hung in the air, like an unspoken tension. There was something unsettling about the timing of the dragon's arrival, especially so soon after Joshua's appearance. Questions buzzed in my mind, demanding answers. The world around me had taken on a surreal quality, and I couldn't help but wonder if these dragons held the key to the secrets of my past life. But for now, all I could do was watch and wait, as the dragons and the men I had come to know engaged in an intricate dance of diplomacy and distrust. "It's better that you go inside." I nodded to Caleb's words of caution and retreated indoors, closing the heavy wooden door behind me. The dragons, a majestic but mysterious presence, had brought with them an air of uncertainty. While Caleb and Tony had chosen to engage in dialogue with these mythical beings, I was tasked with the safety of remaining inside, away from their watchful gaze. Inside the house, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something monumental was occurring just beyond those walls. A storm of emotions swirled within me, and my curiosity warred with my apprehension. In an attempt to distract myself, I turned to the books that lined the shelves of Caleb's study. One particular volume caught my eye. It spoke of the Dragon King's history and the individuals who had played significant roles in his life. It was there, among the pages, that I stumbled upon the name Joshua. As I read about Joshua's past and his connection to Caleb, a strange mixture of emotions washed over me. It was as if the words on the pages held a key to memories long buried in the recesses of my mind. Vague recollections danced at the edge of my consciousness, like fragments of a long-forgotten dream. Exhausted by the mental tug-of-war, I settled into a plush armchair, the book resting on my lap. My eyelids grew heavy, and the lines between reality and memory blurred. I found myself transported into a dreamlike state, where fragments of a memory involving Joshua began to take shape. The dreams of Joshua had become a soothing balm to my restless mind, a respite from the constant uncertainty and unease that seemed to permeate every corner of my life. Night after night, I found myself drawn into a world of memories where Joshua played a prominent role. In these dreams, he appeared as a familiar figure, someone I had known intimately in a different time and place. I couldn't help but acknowledge the guilt that gnawed at me for having been on edge around Joshua, suspecting that he harbored some resentment or changed significantly over the years. It was as though the current Joshua and the one from my past life were two distinct entities, and I couldn't quite reconcile the differences. While my dreams provided some semblance of comfort, my waking hours were dominated by a persistent feeling of disconnect. My memories remained selectively focused on Joshua, to the exclusion of many others, including Caleb. I could only recollect fragments of my time with Caleb when I was hypnotized, and even then, those memories felt distant and detached, as if I were observing them from a third-person perspective. It was a peculiar sensation, one that left me with a lingering sense of disconnection and frustration. I longed to remember the moments I had shared with Caleb, to understand the depth of our relationship in my past life. But those memories remained elusive, slipping through my grasp like water through clenched fingers. Caleb's presence was a constant reminder of this enigmatic past. His intense gaze held a mixture of longing and frustration, as though he too yearned for the connection we once had. I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt each time I met his eyes, knowing that I couldn't offer him the memories he sought. And so, my days were filled with a strange duality, the comfort of my dreams with Joshua, contrasting with the unease of my waking hours spent with Caleb. It was as though I were caught between two worlds, unable to fully embrace either one. Despite my best efforts to bridge the gaps in my memories, they remained stubbornly elusive, like pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit together. I was left with a profound sense of longing, a desire to uncover the hidden truths of my past, and to make sense of the complex relationships that seemed to define my existence. The presence of the dragons, their sudden arrival, and the enigmatic motives behind their actions only added to the uncertainty that plagued me. Caleb's cautious instructions to stay indoors for a few days until their intentions became clear echoed in my mind, serving as a constant reminder of the precariousness of our situation. The days had grown colder as winter approached, and with it, an unspoken chill had settled between Caleb and me. It was a disheartening feeling, one that left me questioning the complexities of our past life and the emotions that seemed to linger in the present. Caleb had become increasingly distant, his gaze often lingering on something just beyond my reach. I couldn't help but wonder if it was my own fault, if my inability to remember our shared history had cast a shadow over our interactions. There was a longing in his eyes, a yearning for something I couldn't quite grasp. As the days went by, I found myself drawn to Caleb, despite the divide that seemed to separate us. The visions of our past life had begun to infiltrate my dreams, offering glimpses of a deep connection that I yearned to understand. It was as though our souls were entwined in a way that transcended the boundaries of time and memory. But just as our connection appeared to be strengthening, Caleb's actions left me feeling disheartened. One morning, without a word or a note of explanation, he departed on a mission alongside Joshua. The abruptness of his departure was like a bitter gust of wind, leaving me feeling adrift and abandoned. I couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment, as though the budding connection between us had been abruptly severed. The absence of his presence in the house echoed in every corner, a reminder of the chasm that had formed between us. Desperation led me to seek answers from Celine and Tony, who explained that Caleb's mission would likely keep him away for the entire winter. Their words only deepened my sense of longing and left me grappling with the growing affection I felt for him. As I watched the snow begin to fall outside, I couldn't help but wonder if Caleb's departure was a reflection of his own inner turmoil. It was a bitter irony, the stark contrast between the warmth of my feelings for him and the cold distance that had settled between us. And so, I was left to navigate the intricate web of emotions that seemed to entangle us, hoping that the winter would eventually give way to a thaw, both in the world outside and in the complexities of our shared history. The migraine hit me like a storm, an onslaught of pain that seemed to emanate from the very core of my being. I clutched my head in agony, trying to ward off the searing sensation that threatened to consume me. It had started as a seemingly innocent conversation among the others in the house, a discussion about a potential stonekeeper found dead in a manner eerily similar to the way I had met my end in that cave. The words had triggered something deep within me, stirring up memories I had tried so hard to forget. Flashes of that dark, foreboding cave assaulted my mind, each image like a jagged shard of glass cutting through my consciousness. The suffocating feeling of desperation and the overwhelming sense of doom washed over me in relentless waves. I struggled to maintain my composure, my hands trembling as I clutched at my temples. The others in the room noticed my distress, their voices becoming distant echoes as I tried to fight through the pain. Caleb's concerned voice reached me through the haze of agony. "Millie, are you all right?" I couldn't find the words to respond, couldn't articulate the torment that was coursing through my mind. All I could do was endure the onslaught of memories and pain, hoping it would pass as swiftly as it had come. The room blurred as I closed my eyes, seeking refuge from the torment within the darkness behind my eyelids. I knew that these flashes of the past were trying to tell me something, trying to unveil the mysteries that shrouded my history. But at that moment, all I wanted was relief from the migraine, from the relentless memories that threatened to consume me. The cave, the darkness, and the sense of impending doom, it was all too much to bear. As the days rolled on, and Caleb remained absent on his mission with Joshua, the atmosphere in the house grew heavy with concern. Celine and Tony had moved in with me. Their presence meant to offer support and companionship in Caleb's absence. But the worry for him was palpable, a shadow that hung over us all. One evening, as we gathered in the cozy living room, the concern finally bubbled to the surface. Celine's voice held a hint of worry as she said, "I can't help but be concerned about Caleb. This situation, it's bringing back such difficult memories for him." Tony nodded in agreement, his expression mirroring Celine's concern. "Yeah, he's been distant ever since we started looking into this stonekeeper's death. I can tell it's affecting him deeply." I had noticed it too, the distant look in Caleb's eyes, the way he withdrew into himself, as if grappling with some inner demons. It was clear that the recent events had unearthed painful memories for him, ones I could only begin to imagine. In an attempt to distract myself from the growing worry, I took to cooking, filling the house with the comforting sense of homemade meals. I also lost myself in books, delving into their pages as a means of escape. But even in my moments of solace, my mind wandered to thoughts of Caleb. I dreamt of a life that felt normal, one where Caleb and I could be together without the weight of ancient histories and supernatural burdens. I longed for a sense of normalcy, where we could be like any other couple, enjoying the simple pleasures of life. One evening, as I stirred a pot of simmering soup, I couldn't resist the urge any longer. I took out my phone and sent Caleb a text message, my fingers tapping out a simple yet heartfelt message: "Please be safe." I knew that he was in the midst of something complex and potentially dangerous, but I couldn't help but worry. My feelings for him had grown stronger with each passing day, and the thought of something happening to him was almost unbearable. The days continued to pass, and I found myself growing increasingly anxious for Caleb's return. The worry for his safety gnawed at the edges of my thoughts, and each day without him felt longer and heavier than the last. During his absence, I had taken refuge in the vivid dreams that had been visiting me, revealing glimpses of my past life. These dreams were like windows into a world I could barely remember, and they left me with a sense of longing and confusion. They were fragmented and disjointed, like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. In an effort to understand more about the world we inhabited and the enigmatic bond between Caleb and me, I had delved into the books that Caleb had written. His words provided insights into the intricacies of our realm, the history of the dragons, and the importance of the Dragonstone. It was as if he had left me a trail of breadcrumbs to follow, and I eagerly absorbed every morsel of knowledge. As I read his writings, I couldn't help but marvel at the depth of his wisdom and the passion that seeped through his words. It was clear that he cared deeply for our world, for the dragons, and for the legacy we carried. And as my understanding of this world grew, so did my feelings for him. In the quiet moments of his absence, I found myself yearning for his return. My heart ached with a longing that was both familiar and foreign, as if I had known him for a lifetime and yet had only just begun to discover the depths of our connection. Life had settled into a surprisingly comfortable and natural routine with Tony and Celine. Our days were filled with shared chores, laughter, and moments of genuine companionship. It was as if we had formed our own little family unit, and I couldn't help but appreciate the warmth and acceptance they had offered me. Yet, even as I felt more at ease and part of this new life, there was an emptiness that persisted. Caleb's absence weighed on me like an unspoken longing. I missed his presence, his unique blend of strength and vulnerability, and the mysterious connection we shared. While I had developed a deep affection for Tony and Celine, my heart still belonged to Caleb. I couldn't shake the hope that when he returned from his mission, we could rebuild whatever had been strained or lost between us. The dreams of our past life had brought me closer to understanding him, and I longed for the chance to bridge the gap that had grown between us. As I delved deeper into my past and the mysterious circumstances surrounding my death, a theory began to take shape in my mind. I couldn't help but wonder if the night of my death had been somehow linked to an eclipse. Eclipses, I had read in Caleb's books, were significant celestial events, often associated with magical properties and symbolizing rebirth of energy. One evening, as Tony and Celine sat with me in the cozy living room, I decided to share my theory with them. "You know," I began hesitantly, "I've been thinking about the night I died. There was something extraordinary about it. It was the night of a lunar eclipse, and I can't help but wonder if that played a role in what happened." Celine raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "An eclipse? How do you figure?" I continued, trying to articulate my thoughts. Eclipses are often considered to be times of intense energy, a sort of cosmic transformation. They can be significant in the world of magic and mysticism. Perhaps, on that night, something extraordinary occurred due to the eclipse's influence. Tony scratched his head, clearly intrigued but not entirely convinced. "That's an interesting theory, Millie, but how does it tie into your death?" I nodded, acknowledging the gaps in my theory. "I don't have all the answers yet, but I have a feeling that there's more to my death than meets the eye. Maybe the eclipse somehow triggered a chain of events that led to what happened." Celine leaned back in her chair, deep in thought. "It's a unique perspective, Millie. We should research more about the magical properties of eclipses and see if we can find any connections." I smiled, grateful for their open-mindedness. "Thank you both. I just have this gut feeling that understanding the role of the eclipse could be a key to unraveling the mysteries of my past." The front door creaked open, and I looked up from my book, my heart racing as Caleb stepped inside. His weary and disheveled appearance struck me like a bolt of lightning. His usually vibrant green eyes were dull, and the lines on his face spoke of exhaustion. "Caleb," I exclaimed, rushing to his side. "You're back early. Are you all right?" He nodded, but his expression remained somber. "I'm fine, Millie," he replied curtly, brushing past me and heading toward the living room. I followed him, feeling a growing sense of unease. "Caleb, I've been thinking about what I said regarding the eclipse," and he interrupted me, his tone cold and distant. "Your theory was correct. I confirmed it." My eyes widened in surprise. "You did? How?" Caleb sighed heavily. "I found someone in Europe who had knowledge about that night. It seems that the eclipse did play a role, just as you suspected." Despite the confirmation of my theory, his cold demeanor left me feeling hurt and confused. "Caleb, I'm glad you found out, but why are you being so distant?" He avoided my gaze, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Millie, while I was away, I received news about 3 potential stonekeepers who were found dead in a cave. They looked exactly like you." My heart sank as the gravity of his words settled in. "Dead? But how?" Caleb's jaw clenched, and he finally met my eyes. "I don't know, Millie, but it's clear that someone is targeting them, and I fear for your safety." I reached out to him, wanting to offer comfort, but he pulled away. "I need rest," he muttered, his voice almost a whisper. I watched as he walked away, heading straight for his bedroom without a word or a glance in my direction. The rejection stung, leaving me feeling helpless and disconnected from the man I had hoped to rebuild my life with. Tony and Celine, who had been present during our tense exchange, exchanged worried glances. Tony placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Millie, give him some time. He's been through a lot." Celine nodded in agreement. "Caleb needs to process everything. We'll be leaving now, but we'll be back to check on you both." As they left, I couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that had settled over our home. I knew that something dark and dangerous loomed on the horizon, and I was determined to stand by Caleb's side, even if he pushed me away. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in our home only seemed to grow. I desperately needed an escape from the heavy atmosphere that had settled over us. Writing had always been my refuge, a way to make sense of my thoughts and emotions, but now, even that seemed elusive. I stared at a blank page on my laptop, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting feelings. Writer's block had taken hold of me, and I sighed in frustration. I closed my laptop, pushing it away, and decided to channel my energy into something else. Cooking seemed like a good distraction, a way to fill the empty hours that stretched ahead. I prepared a meal, one of Caleb's favorites, hoping that it might help bridge the growing distance between us. As the scent of the food wafted through the kitchen, my stomach churned with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. I knocked gently on Caleb's bedroom door, my heart pounding in my chest. "Caleb, I made dinner," I called out, my voice barely louder than a whisper. Silence greeted me, and a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. He was still avoiding me, deliberately ignoring my attempts at reconciliation. I placed the tray of food on the floor outside his door, feeling a lump form in my throat. Just as I was about to turn away, my phone chimed with a message. It was Tony. I eagerly opened the message, hoping for some explanation, some insight into Caleb's behavior. "Leave the food outside his door, Millie," the message read. "He's not ready to talk." My heart sank further, and tears welled up in my eyes. I replied with a simple, "Okay," and retreated to my room, feeling hurt and confused. The once warm and loving connection between us had been replaced by an impenetrable wall, and I couldn't fathom why Caleb was shutting me out. As I lay on my bed, my thoughts spiraled, and I wondered if there was more to the story, more to his distance than he was willing to admit. The days dragged on, and I couldn't shake the heavy cloud of tension that hung over our home. Caleb's distance weighed on me, and I longed for the warmth and connection we had once shared. It was as if a chasm had formed between us, and no matter how hard I tried to bridge it, it seemed to widen with each passing day. I knew that something was bothering Caleb, but he remained closed off, avoiding any interaction with me. Even simple gestures of comfort, like a reassuring touch or a kind word, were met with resistance. It was a painful and frustrating situation, one that left me feeling helpless. I turned to Tony for answers, hoping he might shed some light on Caleb's state of mind. I approached him one evening, my voice laced with concern. "Tony, please, you have to tell me what's going on with Caleb," I implored. Tony hesitated, his expression conflicted. "Millie, I wish I could, but he's not ready to talk about it. He's dealing with something from his past, something he's trying to come to terms with." I nodded, my heart heavy with worry. I wished I could be the one to comfort him, to help him confront whatever demons haunted him, but it seemed that he needed space, and I had to respect that. Determined to do something, anything, to break through the wall Caleb had erected between us, I decided to cook dinner for him. It was a small gesture, a way to show that I cared, even if he wasn't ready to accept it. I prepared his favorite meal, every dish made with love and care. With the tray of food in hand, I approached his bedroom door, my heart pounding. I knocked gently, my voice soft as I called out, "Caleb, I made dinner for you." Silence answered me, and I sighed, my hope dwindling. I placed the tray of food on the floor outside his door, a mix of sadness and frustration washing over me. "Dinner for one," I thought as I made my way to the basement. I couldn't bear the thought of disturbing him any further, so I settled down to eat alone, my thoughts filled with worry for the man I loved, but who seemed so distant now. The night draped our surroundings in an eerie stillness, and it was in this quietude that I heard a faint, peculiar noise. The room I was drawn to had always been securely locked, and the fact that Caleb was now inside was baffling. Yet, my concern for him overrode any hesitation. Approaching the door cautiously, my heart raced, anticipating the unknown. I grasped the handle, and it yielded to my touch. Stepping into the dimly lit chamber, I was greeted by an unexpected sight. There, in the soft glow of ambient light, sat Caleb, his once mighty shoulders slumped in defeat. Rivulets of tears coursed down his cheeks, and he clutched a photograph, a relic from our shared past. The revelation washed over me like a tidal wave. He was grieving for the Millie he had lost, the Millie whose life had ended in tragedy. I couldn't remain a silent observer. Sympathy surged within me, and I moved closer, determined to share in his sorrow. "Caleb," I whispered tenderly, "you don't have to bear this pain alone." Startled, he looked up, his eyes heavy with sorrow and guilt. "Millie," he croaked, his voice breaking like fragile glass, "I'm so sorry, I couldn't protect you." Kneeling beside him, I extended a consoling hand to his trembling shoulder. "Caleb," I murmured, my voice filled with compassion, "it was not your fault. You did everything in your power." He leaned into my touch, tears flowing freely. "Millie," he confessed, voice trembling, "I loved her. I loved you." My throat tightened with emotion as I enfolded him in a comforting embrace. "I know," I reassured him gently. and I love you too." We lingered there on the cool, hard floor of the room, two souls intertwined in shared sorrow. We poured out our grief, finding solace in the presence of one another. In that profound moment, I realized that while we were distinct from our former selves, the love that bound us transcended the bounds of time. As we drifted into a fitful slumber, our bodies pressed closely together, I understood that we would confront whatever challenges the future held united. We would draw strength from our shared history and from the unbreakable bond that had persisted, unyielding, across the eons. In the stillness of the night, I slipped into the realm of dreams, a realm where memories and echoes of my past life often resided. This time, the dream was different. It was vivid, haunting, and crystal clear. I found myself in the dim, rocky confines of a cave, the air thick with anticipation. My younger self, full of hope and naivety, stood beside Ian, waiting for Caleb to join us. The flickering torchlight cast eerie shadows on the cave walls, painting a surreal tableau of our impending fate. Suddenly, a third figure materialized before us. My heart pounded, but I couldn't see their face, nor hear the timbre of their voice. An inexplicable dread washed over me as they approached, shrouded in an ominous cloak of secrecy. Inexorably, the enigmatic figure drew a gleaming blade from the folds of their robe, and time seemed to slow. I watched in helpless horror as Ian, my dear friend from that bygone life, was impaled by the merciless blade. He crumpled to the unforgiving cave floor, his life extinguished in an instant. As the nightmare unfolded before me, I was paralyzed, unable to intervene or even scream. The cavern seemed to close in on me, and I felt an oppressive weight pressing down upon my chest. The dream ended abruptly, and I awoke with a start, my heart racing and my body slick with cold sweat. The vivid memory of that nightmarish vision clung to me, etching itself into my consciousness like a brand. It was a vision of the past, a fragment of a tragic memory that I could no longer deny. My past life had been intertwined with darkness and danger, and the shadows of that life haunted my dreams, serving as a stark reminder of the trials that lay ahead. As I awoke from the haunting dream, my heart still racing with the echoes of that dreadful vision, I found myself alone in the dimly lit room. The weight of the memories lingered, heavy and unsettling, like a specter refusing to depart. Moments later, the door creaked open, and Caleb entered, his face etched with anger and grief. His eyes, once warm and familiar, now bore the weight of sorrow I couldn't comprehend. Seeing me there seemed to ignite his fury. "What are you doing in here?" he demanded, his voice sharp and unyielding. I swallowed hard, the remnants of the dream still fresh in my mind. I had a nightmare," I stammered, my voice quivering. He scowled, his frustration palpable. "This room is off limits to you. Leave and never enter it again." I nodded, my understanding mixed with a sense of unease. Caleb needed his space to grapple with his own demons, to confront the shadows of our shared past that still haunted him. With a heavy heart, I rose from the floor and quietly exited the room, leaving him to his solitude, hoping that time would heal the wounds that bound us together. The warm water of the bath enveloped me, offering a brief respite from the tumultuous emotions that had been churning within me. As I soaked in the comforting embrace of the tub, my thoughts drifted back to the unsettling dream that had plagued my sleep. I carefully washed away the grime of the day, the cool droplets of water soothing my skin. The memory of the cave, the enigmatic figure, and Ian's tragic fate haunted me. I knew that these dreams held clues to my past, to a life I couldn't remember, but felt so deeply connected to. Wrapping myself in a towel, I stepped out of the bath and decided not to burden Caleb with the details just yet. He had been through so much, his pain still raw and palpable. I needed more information, more clarity about the visions that seemed to be unlocking the secrets of my past. The hours stretched long and quiet as I adhered to Caleb's request, giving him the space he needed to grieve in solitude. It was a day of introspection, an opportunity to reflect on the recent turn of events, and my dreams that felt both revealing and elusive. In an attempt to distract myself, I turned to my writing, a sanctuary I often sought when the world felt heavy. Yet despite my best efforts, the words on the page seemed hollow, lacking the depth and passion that had once flowed effortlessly from my pen. Frustration gnawed at me as I realized that my creative well had run dry, mirroring the emotional turmoil within. With a sigh of defeat, I selected the text I had painstakingly crafted and hit the delete key. The cursor blinked mockingly on the empty screen, a reflection of the emptiness I felt within. It was as if my thoughts were scattered, fragmented, much like the memories that eluded me. As the day drew to a close, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Caleb's grief weighed heavily on my heart, and I longed for the connection we once shared, even as I grappled with the mysteries of my past that continued to unravel in my dreams. The night was draped in a heavy silence, much like the countless others that had passed since Caleb's return. I lay in my bed, eyes fixed on the dimly lit ceiling, a restless energy coursing through my veins. It was then that a sensation, sharp and unexpected, pierced through my consciousness. Panic. My heart raced, my breath quickened, and I clutched the sheets, struggling to understand the source of this sudden turmoil. But as I focused, I realized that the panic was not mine, it was Caleb's. My instincts overrode any lingering doubts or fears, propelling me out of my room and down the corridor toward Caleb's door. With each step, my heart pounded in time with his, a synchronous rhythm that drew me closer to him. I hesitated only for a moment, my hand hovering over the door handle, before pushing it open gently. The room was shrouded in darkness, save for a sliver of moonlight that sliced through the curtains. There, on the edge of the bed, was Caleb. His form was hunched, shoulders trembling, as if he were battling some invisible foe. His anguish was palpable, and I couldn't stand idly by. "Caleb," I whispered, approaching cautiously. "It's me, Millie." As I drew nearer, he turned toward me, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and despair. Without a word, I reached out and took his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against mine. "It's all right," I murmured, my voice gentle and reassuring. "I'm here. You're not alone." For a long moment, we simply sat there, our intertwined hands a lifeline in the darkness. The panic that had gripped him began to recede, slowly but surely, replaced by a fragile calm. It was as if our shared presence had the power to soothe the storms that raged within us both. In that quiet room, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, a connection between us, one that had been strained and tested, was reaffirmed. And as we sat there, holding on to each other, it was as though we were beginning to rebuild the bridge that had been severed by the weight of our past and the mysteries that surrounded it. I watched Caleb as he finally succumbed to sleep, his features softened in the gentle embrace of slumber. It was in these quiet moments, when his guard was down, that I could see glimpses of the man I had known before, the one I had come to care for deeply. Our relationship was far from straightforward. It was tangled with threads of history and enigma, woven into a tapestry of emotions both familiar and foreign. The memories of our past lives loomed large, casting long shadows over our present. And yet, despite the complexities and uncertainties that surrounded us, there was an undeniable connection that refused to be severed. As I gazed at him, my thoughts turned to the unresolved mystery of my past life's death. The visions and dreams had offered fragments of a truth that remained just out of reach. The presence of a third figure in the cave haunted my thoughts, an elusive specter that held the key to unlocking the secrets of that fateful night. Justice. The word echoed in my mind like a distant promise. I was determined to uncover the truth, to confront the darkness that had shrouded my past and threatened my present. But I knew that the path to justice would be fraught with challenges and dangers, that it would require unraveling the threads of a millennia-old tapestry. I glanced one more time at Caleb and couldn't help but run my finger over his parted lips. He was just so perfect. A smile appeared on my face as I thought about kissing me right now. The night was still young, and the world outside was cloaked in shadows. No one would know if I did, not even him. Yet, I didn't do it. I would like it more if he was awake, I think. As I made my way into deep slumber, I carried with me the weight of unresolved mysteries and the determination to seek answers, no matter where they might lead. I woke up in Caleb's bed, feeling slightly disoriented. The memories of the previous night slowly trickled back into my consciousness. I had been there to comfort him, to chase away his nightmares, and in doing so, had inadvertently intruded into his personal space. After a quick shower, I decided it was time to find Caleb and apologize for my actions. I needed to make things right, to ensure that our fragile equilibrium was maintained. I couldn't afford any more missteps, not when our relationship was still mired in complexity. I found Caleb in the kitchen, his eyes fixed on a cup of steaming tea. "Caleb," I began tentatively, "I'm sorry for last night. I shouldn't have come into your room like that." He looked up at me, his gaze surprisingly gentle. "Millie, it's not your fault. I'm the one who should apologize. I've been distant, and it's affecting both of us." I nodded, grateful for his understanding. "I just want to make things right between us." Caleb sighed and set his cup down. "Millie, I've been thinking. It might be better if you move into my room. The nightmares have been plaguing me for far too long, and it's not fair to ask you to bear the brunt of it." I blinked in surprise, not expecting such a suggestion. "Are you sure, Caleb? I don't want to impose on you." He smiled, a rare softness in his eyes. "It's not an imposition, Millie. It's a step towards rebuilding what we had, towards finding some semblance of peace in our tangled past." I considered his words for a moment. It was a step, a small one perhaps, but a step nonetheless, and deep down I knew it was a step in the right direction. "All right," I said, determination in my voice. "I'll start packing my things." Caleb's smile grew warmer, and he reached out to squeeze my hand. "Thank you, Millie. We'll figure this out together." As I began the process of moving my belongings into Caleb's room, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we were on the path to unraveling the complexities of our past and forging a future where we could find solace in each other's arms. Caleb's sudden change in behavior had taken me completely by surprise. He had transformed from the stern and hostile guardian into someone who was, dare I say, amicable. The thought of us going out on what I could only describe as a date was something I hadn't fathomed in this peculiar situation. I couldn't deny the flicker of excitement that lit up within me at the prospect of leaving the confines of our home for a while. It had been so long since I had been anywhere beyond those walls, but skepticism lingered beneath the surface. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was all part of some intricate game, one that I didn't fully understand. I found myself dressing up a little, not wanting to disappoint Caleb if this was indeed a date. As I descended the stairs in my slightly more elegant attire, he looked at me and uttered a word that made my heart flutter despite my reservations. "Beautiful." I nodded, a small, hesitant smile forming on my lips. "Thank you." We left the house, and Caleb opened the door of a sleek car waiting in the driveway. His gentleness was baffling, and my caution persisted as I slid into the passenger seat. This was an unexpected twist in our twisted tale. The drive to the restaurant was mostly quiet, with occasional small talk about the town and its history. It was surreal, sitting beside a man I had once considered my captor, now playing the role of my companion for the evening. We arrived at the restaurant, and Caleb held the door open for me with a charming smile. The ambiance was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the tension that often enveloped our home. As we settled into our seats, he looked at me with an earnest expression. "I hope you enjoy this, Millie," he said, his tone surprisingly sincere. I nodded, my skepticism slowly giving way to a desire to embrace this change. "I appreciate it, Caleb. It's really nice here." And as we got seated, I couldn't help but wonder about the man across from me. This new side of Caleb was perplexing, and I couldn't deny the curiosity it sparked within me. Yet, leaving the house felt like a breath of fresh air, a liberation from the confines of our peculiar existence. The tension that had coiled around me in our home, like an ever-present specter, began to unravel as I stepped outside. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt normal, like an ordinary person on an ordinary outing. We enjoyed a pleasant meal at the restaurant, with Caleb's newfound amicability easing my apprehension. It was a strange experience, feeling the weight of his stern gaze replaced by something lighter, something almost resembling camaraderie. His charming manners and the unexpected compliments he'd paid me still lingered in my thoughts, mingling with my skepticism. After we'd finished eating, Caleb led the way outside, and I followed him into the cool evening air. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief at the prospect of lingering outside a little longer, savoring the rare taste of freedom. When I suggested we delay our return home, a hint of Caleb's coldness returned to his demeanor. His reluctance was palpable, as if the facade of congeniality he had carefully crafted was beginning to crack. But after a brief, tense pause, he agreed to my suggestion, albeit with a hint of impatience in his voice. "Very well, we can take a walk," he said, his tone betraying the inner turmoil he might be experiencing. And so we walked together, side by side, the distance between us, not just measured in steps, but also in the unspoken mysteries that surrounded us. The evening's serenity belied the complexities of our relationship. The park was a haven of tranquility, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere that had lingered at home. As we strolled along the winding paths, I couldn't help but feel a sense of lightness, a lifting of the burdens that had weighed me down for so long. I spotted a set of swings ahead, their rusty chains and creaking seats invoking a sense of nostalgia from my childhood. Eager to capture a moment of pure joy, I turned to Caleb and flashed an inviting smile. "Come on, Caleb. Let's have some fun," I urged, hoping he'd relent. Caleb's brows furrowed in hesitation, but after a brief pause, a glimmer of reluctant amusement flickered in his eyes. He nodded, perhaps intrigued by the prospect of doing something so utterly ordinary. As I swung higher and higher, the wind rushing past me, I couldn't help but steal glances at Caleb. His stoic facade slowly melted away, revealing a man who was more complex than I had ever imagined. He hesitated for a moment before joining me on the swings, and that simple act of surrendering to the childlike thrill of it all was a revelation. Our laughter intertwined with the gentle rustling of leaves, creating a melody that resonated with an unexpected sense of closeness. I watched him, his dark hair ruffled by the breeze, and I noticed something incredible, an actual smile, one that reached his eyes, lighting them up in a way I hadn't seen before. A grin tugged at my own lips, and I made a silent vow to myself. I wanted to see that smile again, and not just once. I wanted to make it my daily goal to coax even the faintest hint of a smile from Caleb, as if I could unravel the layers of complexity that shrouded him and bring a sense of warmth into his life, just as he had done for me. As we walked back from the park, Caleb's demeanor shifted once again. He turned to me and spoke, his voice tinged with a rare gentleness. "Millie, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his eyes locked onto mine. My heart skipped a beat, wondering what could be so important. "What is it?" I asked, my voice a mixture of anticipation and curiosity. Caleb's lips curved into a slight smile, a sight that was becoming more familiar, but no less captivating. "You can leave the house now," he said, "but only if you're accompanied by me, Tony, or Joshua." I blinked in surprise, my heart soaring at the news. It was a step forward, a sign that Caleb was willing to trust me a little more, and that I was gradually regaining my freedom. "Thank you," I said, genuinely grateful. "I appreciate that, Caleb." He nodded, his gaze softening. "Just promise me you'll be careful," he said, concern lacing his words. "I don't want anything to happen to you." I couldn't help but smile at his protectiveness, touched by his genuine worry for my safety. "I promise," I replied, my voice sincere. "I'll be careful, and I'll make the most of this opportunity." With that promise between us, I looked forward to exploring more of my past and perhaps unraveling the mysteries that had long been hidden away. After returning to the house, I couldn't wait to share the day's exciting experiences with Celine. She had become not only a close friend but also a source of comfort and support in this strange world I found myself in. As we settled into the cozy basement, I began recounting every detail of our outing, from the restaurant to the park, with enthusiasm. "And then," I said, my voice filled with excitement, "Caleb actually pushed me on the swings. Can you believe it?" Celine chuckled, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "Wow, he must have really changed his tune. That sounds like quite the day." I nodded, a smile stretching across my face. "It was, Celine. I feel like things are starting to look up, like there's hope for the future." My friend gave me an encouraging pat on the back. "I'm so glad to hear that, Millie. You deserve happiness and freedom." We spent the evening chatting about our dreams, hopes, and even shared a few silly stories. It was a welcome escape from the shadows of our pasts, and for the first time in a long while, I felt positive about my relationship with Caleb and the possibilities that lay ahead. Days turned into weeks, and an unsettling silence had settled over the house. Caleb and Tony had left on what they described as a business trip, promising to return soon. Yet as the hours stretched into days, and the days into weeks. Their absence became increasingly worrisome. I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease and restlessness as I moved about the empty house, my footsteps echoing through the halls. Every creak of the old wooden floors seemed to magnify the isolation I felt. The quietness weighed on me like a heavy shroud, and I missed the reassuring presence of Caleb and Tony. Each day, I would look out the window, hoping to see their familiar figures returning up the winding path to the house. I tried to keep myself occupied, reading books and working on my writing, but the worry gnawed at me. What could be taking them so long? Were they in danger? Were they hurt? I spent restless nights lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to find solace in sleep. My thoughts were consumed by the uncertainty of their whereabouts, and I couldn't help but fear the worst. It was a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of our world and the fragile balance we were trying to maintain. The days dragged on, and my sense of unease deepened into frustration. I couldn't stand the feeling of being trapped within those four walls, waiting for a return that seemed increasingly uncertain. I found myself spending long hours on the balcony, gazing out at the landscape beyond. The once serene view now felt like a prison, as I strained my eyes to catch any sign of their arrival. The wind carried with it the distant sounds of the world outside, a cruel reminder of my isolation. I made countless attempts to reach out to Caleb, my fingers tapping out messages on my phone, each one filled with mounting worry and frustration. I checked my inbox repeatedly, hoping for a response that never came. The silence from his end only intensified my sense of helplessness. I couldn't help but wonder what could be keeping them away for so long. Had something gone terribly wrong? Were they in danger? With each unanswered message, my anxiety grew, and I felt like a caged bird, desperately flapping its wings against the bars, yearning for freedom. A few days later, I watched from the balcony and spotted Caleb and Tony returning home. My heart raced with a mix of relief and frustration. I had spent endless days waiting for their return, feeling abandoned and alone. I ran back downstairs to meet them and found that Celine had seen them coming back as well. We were both at the door by the time it opened to reveal Caleb and Tony. They were both exhausted and in need of a good bath, but to me, it all didn't matter. I was just glad that they were back alive. As they approached, I couldn't help but notice the way Celine ran into Tony's arms, and they shared a passionate kiss. Once they parted, their eyes were filled with affectionate words that needed no utterance. It was as if they were the only people left on Earth, and they didn't even care that Caleb and I were watching them. "I missed you so much, Celine," Tony whispered, running a hand over her hair. Celine smiled softly, sparks in her gaze. "I missed you too, Tony, more than words can express." The jealousy stirred within me as I watched them embrace again. It felt like they had a connection too, a bond that had been forged in the past. It was even stronger than the one between me and Caleb. Speaking of him, I glanced in his direction and longed for that kind of closeness with him, but he was being distant. I had no doubt that he was preoccupied, but still, was a little affection too much to ask for? I swallowed my feelings, trying to hide the hurt that welled up inside me. I guess I had to be patient and understand that Caleb and Tony weren't the same. My mate was unfortunately colder and more difficult to please. Still, the pang of jealousy and neglect lingered, leaving me feeling like an outsider in this house. Caleb and I exchanged no words as we crossed paths, our eyes meeting briefly before we continued on separate ways. I turned away, my eyes fixed on the horizon as tears threatened to fall. No, it would be too easy to just let this pass without reacting. I couldn't contain my frustration any longer. Caleb's sudden disappearance for weeks, the isolation, and the uncertainty had taken a toll on me. As he entered our shared bedroom, I finally decided to confront him. "Caleb," I began, my voice trembling with pent-up emotions, "we need to talk about this. You can't just disappear for so long without a word." He turned to me, his expression unreadable, and simply said, "Get ready, we're going out." I sighed, exasperated by his dismissive attitude. "Caleb, please, just talk to me. Where are we going?" He didn't respond to my question. Instead, he grabbed a coat and held it out to me. I looked at the coat, puzzled, then back at him. "What's going on? Why won't you answer me?" I asked, my frustration growing. But Caleb remained stoic, his eyes inscrutable. He stepped closer, holding the coat open as if demanding that I put it on. His actions were forceful, leaving me with no choice but to comply. I reluctantly slipped into the coat, feeling a mixture of confusion and annoyance. As we headed out of our room and into the unknown, my unease deepened. I had so many questions, but it seemed that Caleb was determined to keep me in the dark. It was frustrating and infuriating, but at that moment I had no choice but to follow him, hoping that he would eventually open up and share more with me. As Caleb brought me to the park against my will, my frustration grew. I felt like a child being dragged somewhere against their wishes. He left me alone near the swings and walked away to make some phone calls. I watched him as he distanced himself from me, his actions only fueling my irritation. Why was he doing this? Why couldn't he just talk to me, explain everything that had been happening during his absence? Left to my own devices, I glanced around the park, feeling a mix of emotions. Children played on the swings, their laughter and innocent joy contrasting sharply with my current predicament. I hesitated for a moment, feeling out of place among them. But as I watched the children, I couldn't help myself. Despite my annoyance, I approached the swings and tentatively sat down on one. I pushed myself back and forth, the gentle motion somewhat soothing my nerves. It was a small comfort amidst the confusion that had become my life. All the while, I couldn't help but steal glances in Caleb's direction, wondering what he was so preoccupied with on those phone calls. My patience was wearing thin. Sitting on the swing, a gnawing sense of loneliness and frustration washed over me. Caleb's mysterious behavior had left me feeling isolated and ignored. I swung back and forth mechanically, lost in my thoughts, trying to make sense of it all. But my momentary peace was shattered when a stranger approached me, his intentions dark and sinister. His sudden presence sent a shiver down my spine. Panic gripped my chest as he lunged toward me, his hands reaching out to grab me. In an instant, I found myself locked in a harrowing struggle to free myself from his grasp. Fear coursed through my veins as I fought with every ounce of strength, desperately making enough noise to draw Caleb's attention. Just when it seemed like my world was about to crumble, there was a blur of movement, and suddenly, I was released from the stranger's grip. Startled, I stumbled back, trying to regain my composure. As I looked up, I saw Caleb, his features twisted in anger and determination. In a flash, he had used his incredible speed to intervene, throwing the would-be kidnapper aside with a force that left me in shock. The man scrambled to his feet and dashed toward a black sedan that was waiting nearby, quickly disappearing into the distance. Caleb and I were left standing there, our breaths heavy and our hearts pounding with adrenaline. The tension in the air was palpable, and the realization of what had just transpired slowly sank in. We exchanged a wide-eyed glance, both of us stunned by the sudden danger that had befallen us. Back at home, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins, Caleb and I sat down to discuss the alarming implications of the incident at the park. The tension in the air was thick, and our conversation carried a heavy weight. Caleb's brows were furrowed, his expression a mixture of concern and frustration. "This changes things," he said, his voice low and serious. I nodded, my heart still pounding. "He knows about you, Caleb. He saw what you can do." Caleb clenched his jaw, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. "We can't ignore this. He might expose us, or worse." Fear gnawed at me as I considered the potential consequences. "What do we do now?" Caleb met my gaze, his eyes filled with determination. "We need to be more cautious, Millie. We can't afford any slip-ups." I nodded, understanding the gravity of our situation. "We'll have to be even more careful from now on." As we contemplated the uncertain future that lay ahead, the weight of our secret pressed down on us, reminding us that we were in a precarious position that required unwavering vigilance. I couldn't help but feel uneasy around Joshua. His sudden appearance had disrupted the fragile balance that had formed within our group. I needed to discuss my feelings with Caleb, the one person I trusted completely. One evening, I found an opportunity to talk to Caleb privately. "Caleb," I began tentatively, "I can't help but feel uneasy about Joshua." Caleb looked at me with understanding in his eyes. "I know it's been an adjustment, Millie, but he's here to help." I nodded, though my unease still lingered. "I'll try to give him a chance." A few days later, as we gathered in the living room, Caleb brought up the recent attack on our home. "I don't think it was random," he said, his voice measured. Joshua, who had been studying a book nearby, looked up. "It could have been a passerby who stumbled upon you guys." Caleb shook his head. "No, Millie and I were followed to the park. This was deliberate." The gravity of the situation settled over us like a heavy shroud. We knew that we couldn't afford to underestimate the threat that now loomed over us. As the minutes passed, I couldn't shake off the nagging feeling that something was off about Joshua. It wasn't just his sudden appearance at home when no one had called him over, but a subtle shift in his behavior that made me uneasy. I couldn't help but contemplate the possibility that Joshua might actually be Ian, Caleb's supposedly dead twin brother. I'd heard stories about Ian, and though I'd never met him personally in my past life, his reputation was notorious. He was known to be elusive, cunning, and untrustworthy. I couldn't ignore the unease that gnawed at me whenever he was nearby, like a subtle undercurrent of danger. The more I observed Joshua, or Ian if my suspicions were correct, the more I saw glimpses of his past actions in his present behavior. But I kept my thoughts to myself, unsure of how to approach Caleb with such a sensitive topic. The last thing we needed was to sow seeds of doubt among our already fragile group. The tension in the room was palpable as we discussed the recent attack on our home. Caleb, Tony, Celine, and I were all on edge, considering our options to identify the attacker. Caleb had suggested using facial recognition software to track down the man who had tried to kidnap me, while Tony and Celine were eager to find any leads. I offered to help by drawing a description of the attacker, hoping it might aid in identifying him. But it was Joshua's reaction that stood out the most. His disinterest and reluctance to pursue the matter puzzled me. As I began to sketch the face of the man who had threatened me, I noticed Joshua's nonchalant demeanor. He seemed almost dismissive of the entire discussion. "Joshua, don't you think it's crucial that we find out who this person was?" Caleb pressed, clearly frustrated by his twin's indifference. Joshua glanced at the rough sketch I was working on but didn't respond immediately. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, his expression inscrutable. "It could have been a random incident, couldn't it?" he finally said, his voice lacking conviction. I couldn't help but exchange a glance with Caleb, a sense of unease growing within me. It was as if Joshua had something to hide or was deliberately trying to divert our attention from the issue at hand. Whatever his motives, it was becoming increasingly clear that there was more to Joshua's presence than met the eye. The decision weighed heavily on our minds as we continued to discuss our next steps in the wake of the recent attack. Tony had suggested that he should go and investigate by asking around the neighborhood, hoping to gather any information about the mysterious attacker. It was a reasonable plan, but Caleb, ever protective, immediately offered to accompany him, not wanting to leave anything to chance. I, on the other hand, felt a gnawing sense of unease at the thought of being left alone at home with Joshua. Despite my lingering suspicions about him, I couldn't deny the tension that seemed to follow in his wake. The idea of being alone with him in the house made me distinctly uncomfortable. "I'd like to come with you," I interjected, my voice firm but tinged with apprehension, directing my request towards Tony and Caleb. Caleb hesitated, clearly torn between his instinct to protect me and the necessity of Tony's mission. He glanced at Tony, who seemed equally uncertain. Tony spoke up, understanding my concern. "Millie, you don't have to worry about staying alone with Joshua. We'll be back soon." But my unease persisted, and I insisted, "Please, Caleb, I'd feel much safer if you were here with me." After a tense pause, Caleb finally relented. "All right, Millie, we'll stay here together." His eyes held a mixture of concern and reassurance, and I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. It was a compromise, one that allowed me to feel safer, even if it meant we couldn't immediately pursue the investigation. After Joshua had left, leaving Caleb and me alone once more, I felt the pressing need to share my growing suspicions with Caleb. It was a burden that had been gnawing at me, and I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. "Caleb," I began, my voice wavering slightly with anxiety, "I can't shake the feeling that Joshua might be Ian. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? His behavior has changed so drastically, and I feel uneasy around him. Caleb, who had been deep in thought, turned his attention to me, his brow furrowing. He considered my words carefully before responding. Millie, I understand that recent events have been unsettling, and it's natural to be wary. But you must remember, Ian was killed. Joshua is his twin brother, and he's here to help us. His words did little to assuage my concerns, and I persisted. I know it sounds crazy, but what if he faked his death? We've seen strange things, Caleb, and I can't shake this feeling of dread when he's around. Caleb sighed, a mixture of frustration and understanding in his eyes. He reached out and gently held my hand, his touch offering some comfort. I promise, Millie, I won't leave you alone with him, if that's what you're worried about. But let's not jump to conclusions just yet. We need more evidence before we accuse him of anything. I nodded, relieved that Caleb had at least acknowledged my concerns. Still, the unease lingered, and I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to Joshua's story than met the eye. As our conversation came to a close, a moment of tenderness unfolded between Caleb and me. His hand gently cupped my cheek, his thumb softly caressing it. It was a gesture that felt surprisingly intimate, given our complicated history. He leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead, his lips warm and reassuring. I blinked up at him, our eyes meeting, and for a fleeting instant, it felt like the world around us faded away. The touch of his lips lingered on my skin, and his deep, thoughtful gaze held mine. It was a gesture I hadn't experienced from Caleb before, and it left me with a fluttering in my chest. I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to it than simple reassurance. Was he beginning to develop feelings for me, just as I had started to develop feelings for him? It was a question that lingered in the air, unspoken yet palpable, as we remained in that quiet moment of connection. Caleb's POV. The night was draped in shadows as I slipped out of the house, leaving Millie peacefully asleep. My heart carried the weight of concern for her safety, and it fueled my determination to unearth the truth behind the attack. Tony, my loyal friend and confidant, stood waiting for me in the darkness, his eyes reflecting a shared determination. Together, we ventured into the heart of the city, where the neon lights of bars and clubs illuminated the streets. It was a world hidden from the eyes of most, a place where dragons could be themselves, free from the prying gaze of humans. We knew where to look, for dragons like us had our favorite haunts. Hours passed as we traversed from one establishment to another, inquiring about the mysterious attacker. We described the man I had encountered in the park, hoping that someone had seen or heard something that might lead us to answers. The responses were mostly indifferent or vague, the patrons shielding their secrets with practiced indifference. Just when we were about to give up, a decrepit club came into view. The fading neon sign read, "The Midnight Flame," and it seemed to have witnessed decades of debauchery. We pushed open the heavy wooden door, and the scent of stale alcohol and dimly lit ambiance welcomed us. An elderly barmaid with gray hair and sharp eyes stood behind the counter, wiping a glass with a rag as if lost in her own world. I approached cautiously, my voice measured yet determined. "We're looking for a man," I began, describing the assailant. The barmaid's eyes lit up the further I spoke. "His name is Larry," he exclaimed. Tony and I exchanged hopeful looks. The barmaid was convinced of herself, her gaze sharpening as she regarded us. "Larry, you say?" I asked. She leaned in closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Yeah, I might know who you're talking about. He's been stirring up trouble lately, hanging that with the wrong crowd." Relief washed over me, mingled with a surge of urgency. "Where can we find him?" The barmaid hesitated before finally divulging, "He's been crashing at a place not far from here. It's an old warehouse on Elm Street, abandoned for years, but he might have changed location since then. You can go and look for yourself. Be careful, though. He's a dangerous one." I nodded, gratitude welling up within me. "Thank you for your help." We left the dimly lit club, our path now clear. Larry, the elusive attacker, had a name and a place of residence. It was a lead we couldn't afford to ignore, and as we strode through the night, the echoes of our footsteps resonated with the promise of answers and justice. As Tony and I approached the location the barmaid had mentioned, the abandoned warehouse loomed before us like a relic of a forgotten era. The night air was thick with tension, and we could sense that we were stepping into a dangerous territory. Young gangsters and petty thieves had congregated here, their presence marked by the eerie glow of flickering fires and the echo of raucous laughter. I scanned the area, searching for any sign of Larry, our mysterious assailant. The place was a haven for miscreants, and there was no telling what kind of company he kept. It wasn't long before I noticed the wary glances thrown our way, their eyes filled with suspicion and hostility. We ventured further into the midst of the gathering, and I decided to take a more direct approach. I approached a young man, his face obscured by a tattered hood. "We're looking for someone named Larry," I began, my voice steady. "Have you seen him?" The hooded figure glanced around nervously before snarling, "What's it to you?" Tony and I exchanged a knowing look, our instincts warning us that this wouldn't be an easy conversation. "We have some business with him." Tony replied cautiously, "It's in his best interest to cooperate." The response was not what we had hoped for. The gangsters around us grew more hostile, and the tension in the air thickened. It wasn't long before the situation escalated, and fists were exchanged. We were outnumbered, but experience and skill were on our side, and we held our own in the ensuing brawl. As the confrontation wore on, our assailants began to scatter, fleeing from the scene as they realized they were outmatched. I managed to grab one of them before he could escape, pinning him to the ground. His face was bruised and bloodied, but I needed answers. "Where's Larry?" I demanded, my voice firm but not unkind. The young man trembled beneath my grip, fear evident in his eyes. He stammered, "I don't know where he is now, but I've heard he got hired by some powerful people a few weeks ago. They gave him a big job, something important." The revelation sent a shiver down my spine. Larry hadn't acted alone. He had been hired by someone with considerable influence. It was a lead, albeit a vague one, but it was more than we had before. With a final warning to the trembling informant, I released him, and he scrambled to his feet, fleeing into the night. Tony and I exchanged a somber look, knowing that we were now one step closer to unraveling the mystery behind the attack on our home. But this newfound knowledge came with its own set of questions, and the identity of those powerful people remained a haunting enigma. As I returned home with Tony, a heavy weight of responsibility pressed upon my shoulders. The night's investigation had yielded valuable information, but it had also reinforced the perilous nature of our situation. The safety of our home, and more importantly, Millie's well-being, remained paramount in my mind. I made my way to our shared bedroom, where Millie lay peacefully, her delicate form bathed in the soft glow of moonlight filtering through the curtains. Her presence was a soothing balm to the turmoil that had gripped my heart in recent times. She deserved so much better than the cold, distant demeanor I had subjected her to. As I sat by her sleeping form, I couldn't help but let my gaze linger on her features. The vulnerability she displayed in slumber was a stark contrast to the resilience she had shown since her arrival in our world. My feelings for her had grown, evolved into something beyond mere obligation. Regret gnawed at me for not treating her with the warmth and kindness she deserved. A determination welled up within me, a newfound resolve to protect her, not just as the potential stonekeeper, but as Millie, the person who had captured my heart. I knew I couldn't erase the past, but I could change the course of our future together. Leaning in, I pressed a gentle, chaste kiss to her lips, a symbol of my acceptance, a promise to be patient, and to allow her the time she needed to feel comfortable around me. The sensation of her soft breath against my skin, even in her sleep, brought a sense of contentment and longing. I whispered softly, though she couldn't hear me, "I'll wait for you, Millie, for as long as it takes." With that, I settled into a watchful silence, my commitment unwavering, as I patiently awaited the day when she would fully embrace the connection between us, and we could face the challenges ahead together. I sat at the breakfast table with Caleb, a sense of unease lingering in the air. Recent events had left me suspicious, particularly when it came to Joshua. There was something about his presence that didn't sit right with me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he might be connected to the attack. I took a sip of my tea, trying to find the right words to express my concerns. "Caleb," I began cautiously, "I can't help but wonder about Joshua's involvement in what happened recently. There's something about him that just doesn't feel right." Caleb raised an eyebrow, his expression guarded. Millie, you're letting your imagination run wild. Joshua's been a close friend for a long time. He wouldn't betray us. I couldn't help but worry, and I voiced my concerns. I understand that, but what if his loyalty is divided? What if he's involved with those who attacked us? Caleb's jaw tightened, and I sensed his frustration. Millie, you're overthinking this. Joshua is not your enemy. He's here to help us. The tension in the room was palpable, and I knew that we were at an impasse. Despite Caleb's reassurances, my gut told me that I needed to be cautious, especially for my own safety. Loyalties could be complicated, and I couldn't ignore the doubts that had taken root in my mind. Caleb's eyes held a mixture of concern and determination as he spoke, his voice low and reassuring. Millie, I promise to protect you. Don't worry, all right? I won't let anything happen to you. His words brought a sense of relief, and I nodded in agreement. I trust you, Caleb. We'll watch out for each other. A smile tugged at the corners of his lips as he continued. And speaking of watching out, we're going to start going out daily. It's important that we don't draw too much attention. The prospect of leaving the house excited me, and I practically beamed as I replied, That sounds wonderful, Caleb. I've been cooped up for too long. As we both began to eat our breakfast, I couldn't help but think about Caleb's upcoming birthday. It was a perfect opportunity to show my appreciation for him, and an idea began to form in my mind. Caleb, I think I want to get you a birthday gift, I said with enthusiasm. He looked genuinely surprised, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. You don't have to do that, Millie. But I shook my head, determined. No, I want to. It's the least I can do to show my gratitude for everything you've done for me. Caleb's eyes softened, and he reached across the table to place his hand over mine. Thank you, Millie. Your presence is already the greatest gift I could ask for. I smiled back at him, feeling a warmth in my heart. There was still much to uncover about our past, but in that moment, I knew that our bond was growing stronger with each passing day. Suddenly, our breakfast moment was interrupted. As Tony and Celine entered the room, their expressions held a sense of urgency. I glanced over at Caleb, who was listening intently to what they had to say. The news they brought was unsettling. The council wants to meet with you, Caleb, Tony explained, his voice laced with concern. They say it's urgent. Caleb's brows furrowed in response. He turned to me, regret in his eyes. Millie, I'm afraid our plans will have to be postponed, he said, his voice apologetic. I nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. It was essential for him to attend this meeting. I know, Caleb, you have to go. He sighed, clearly torn between his duty and leaving me behind. I'm sorry for this, Millie. Celine will stay with you while I'm gone. And please, take this, he said, handing me a credit card. Use it for anything you need, but remember to stay safe. I took the card and nodded, my heart heavy with the prospect of being separated from him once again. I will, Caleb. Please come back soon. He gave me a reassuring smile, his hand gently cupping my cheek. I promise, it won't be long. I'll return in a day or two at the most. With a final glance, Caleb left the room, leaving me in the care of Celine. As they departed, I couldn't help but hope that whatever awaited Caleb at the council would not pose any danger to him or our fragile relationship. The day was bright and sunny as Celine and I prepared to go shopping for Caleb's upcoming birthday. I had a specific gift in mind, something that would express my feelings for him. As we discussed our plans, I managed to convince Celine that a trip out of town to a larger mall would be ideal. Driving down the winding roads, I felt a sense of freedom and excitement. It had been a while since I'd been out of the house, and I was looking forward to selecting the perfect gift for Caleb. The thought of seeing him smile on his special day filled me with joy. However, our pleasant outing took a dark turn when a black truck suddenly appeared in our rearview mirror. It was tailing us, getting closer with each passing second. Panic surged within me as I realized we were being chased. I quickly grabbed my phone and sent a frantic message to Caleb, hoping he would receive it in time. The situation grew increasingly dire as the black truck continued its relentless pursuit. The road became narrower and more treacherous, making it difficult to shake our pursuers. I could feel my heart pounding, and I urged Celine to keep driving as fast as she could. But it was too late. The black truck rammed into our car, causing it to swerve off the road and down a steep hill. Everything happened in a blur as our vehicle rolled uncontrollably, and I struggled to hold on. Pain shot through my body as the car finally came to a stop. As I tried to regain my senses, I saw Joshua approaching us, his expression unreadable. The world around me began to fade, and darkness overtook my vision as I slipped into unconsciousness, leaving me with a sense of impending danger and uncertainty. Caleb's POV. The moment my phone chimed with an urgent message from Millie, dread settled in the pit of my stomach. I quickly read her frantic words, realizing that something had gone terribly wrong. Without wasting a second, I sprang into action, sharing the distressing news with Tony. Our mission was abruptly abandoned as we raced back home, fear gnawing at me with every passing second. The familiar landscape outside the car window blurred into a haze as my thoughts raced, trying to anticipate the danger that had befallen Millie and Celine. I clenched the steering wheel, my knuckles white with tension, my mind consumed with worry for Millie's safety. Whatever had happened, I knew I had to get to her as quickly as possible. We didn't need to reach home. On the way, Tony and I came upon a scene out of a horror movie. An accident had happened on the main road, and the car fuming a few meters away on the side was Celine's. The sight of Celine's overturned car and her unconscious form was a jarring shock. I rushed to her side, my heart pounding in my chest. Kneeling beside her, I checked for vital signs. She was alive, but in need of urgent medical attention. "We have to get her help," I said, my voice tense with worry. Tony was already reaching for his phone to call for an ambulance. As I focused on Celine, my heightened senses caught something amiss in the air. A strange scent, faint yet distinct, lingered nearby. I scanned the surroundings, my eyes darting around the wreckage and the ground, searching for clues. Signs of a struggle were evident, and the lingering odor of masking spray sent alarm bells ringing in my mind. Tony's voice was filled with concern as he asked, "What do you think happened here?" I continued to survey the scene, my senses on high alert. Someone was here, Tony, someone who knew what they were doing, and they took Millie. Dread washed over me, and Tony's eyes widened in alarm. "We have to find her, and quickly." I nodded, my jaw set with determination. "I'll follow this trail. You call the authorities and get Celine to safety. I won't rest until Millie is back with us." Suddenly, Celine began stirring in Tony's arms. He was about to call 911, but hung up the phone, staring hopefully at his lover's face. Tony and I huddled around her, our faces etched with worry and determination. She was slowly regaining consciousness, her eyelids fluttering as she groggily blinked. "Celine, can you hear me?" I asked, my voice laced with urgency. She nodded weakly, and a tremor of pain flickered across her features. "What happened?" she mumbled. "We need to know everything, Celine," Tony urged. "Tell us what you remember." Celine's brow furrowed as she struggled to recall the events leading up to the accident. Her words came out in fragments, her voice strained with discomfort. "We, the black truck, they chased us, forced us off the road." My heart sank at her words. It was as I feared, a deliberate attack. "Do you remember anything about the people in the black truck?" I pressed. She shook her head slowly, wincing as she did so. "I didn't get a good look. They were too fast, and then everything went dark." Tony and I exchanged concerned glances. We needed more information, but it seemed Celine's memory was as fragmented as the scene of the accident. "Rest now, Celine," I said gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll take care of things from here. You've been through a lot." As Tony called for medical assistance, I couldn't shake the unease settling over me. The black truck, the scent-masking spray, and now Celine's account. All signs pointed to a deliberate and calculated abduction. Millie was in danger, and time was running out. We had to find her, no matter the cost. As I knelt beside Celine, trying to piece together the events of the accident, a sudden, agonizing pain pierced through me. It was as if someone had ripped out a part of my soul, leaving behind a raw and gaping void. I gasped, clutching my chest as the sensation washed over me. Tony, who had been on the phone with emergency services, turned to me with alarm. "Caleb, are you all right?" he asked. I couldn't find words to respond. My mind was in turmoil, the pain too intense to bear. It was the unmistakable sensation of our mate bond being severed, a bond that had connected Millie and me, heart, and soul. Tears welled up in my eyes as the truth hit me like a tidal wave. Millie was gone, and our connection had been violently torn apart. I struggled to breathe, my hands trembling, as a profound sense of loss and despair washed over me. Tony rushed to my side, his expression mirroring my grief. "Caleb, we need to find her," he urged, his voice filled with determination. "We can't lose her." With great effort, I nodded, my resolve hardening. Millie was out there, in danger, and I would stop at nothing to bring her back, to repair the shattered bond that connected us. The pain in my chest was a constant reminder of what I had lost, but it also fueled my determination to reunite with my mate, no matter the challenges that lay ahead. I dialed Joshua's number with a growing sense of urgency, my fingers trembling as I brought the phone to my ear. Each passing moment without Millie felt like an eternity, and I couldn't afford to waste any more time. "Joshua," I said as soon as he picked up, "we need your help. Millie's gone, and we think she's been taken." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line before Joshua responded, his voice filled with concern. "Caleb, I'll be there as soon as I can. Where should we meet?" I quickly relayed our location to Joshua, and he assured me he would arrive as swiftly as possible. It was a relief to know he would be joining us. His tracking skills were unparalleled, and we needed every advantage we could get. As I hung up the phone, a gnawing suspicion began to creep into my mind. Could Joshua truly be trusted in this situation? I had known him for so long, but recent events had cast a shadow of doubt over his actions. The possibility that he might be involved in Millie's disappearance sent a chill down my spine. Nevertheless, I couldn't afford to let paranoia cloud my judgment. Millie's safety was my top priority, and if Joshua could help us find her, I had to put aside my doubts for now. Tony and I waited anxiously for Joshua's arrival, our thoughts consumed by the mystery of Millie's disappearance and the urgency of bringing her back to safety. As Joshua joined us, I tried to hide my unease behind a facade of determination. We needed all the help we could get to find Millie, and I couldn't let my doubts about Joshua distract us from the task at hand. With a sense of urgency, I announced my intention to search for Millie from above in my dragon form. I saw the worry in Tony and Joshua's eyes, but they nodded in agreement. I knew they were concerned about my well-being, but finding Millie was paramount. With a powerful surge of energy, I transformed into my dragon form and soared into the sky. The wind rushed past me as I scanned the landscape below, desperately searching for any sign of Millie. But as I gained altitude, I made a difficult decision. I couldn't let Joshua in on my plan. It was a dangerous gamble, but it was the only way to uncover the truth. Instead of heading in the direction I had indicated, I veered off in the opposite one. I knew it was risky, but I had to be sure of Joshua's intentions. If he was involved in Millie's disappearance, I needed to uncover his motives and protect her at all costs. As I flew, my thoughts were consumed by Millie. I couldn't deny the depth of my feelings for her any longer. The fear of losing her had awakened emotions I had long buried, and I realized that I would do anything to ensure her safety. I couldn't bear the thought of losing her again, and the mere idea of her being in danger sent shivers down my spine. My dragon form began to regain its strength as determination coursed through me. I would find Millie, no matter the cost. I couldn't let her down. Not now. Not ever. In the dark depths of my restless slumber, the nightmare played out once again, like an unending loop of torment. I found myself trapped in the chilling memories of my death, reliving the nightmarish events that had haunted me for so long. I stood in that dreaded cave, the very same one where I had lost my life. Beside me, Ian, his presence a comforting yet haunting reminder of what we had once been. But our solace was short-lived, for an ominous figure approached, shrouded in darkness, with their face obscured by an impenetrable veil. I strained to see, to pierce through the shadows and uncover the identity of the killer. Desperation coursed through me as I reached out, trying to grasp any clue that might reveal the truth. But every time, the murderer's face remained an enigmatic blur, slipping away from my grasp like smoke through my fingers. In the dream, I couldn't help but feel the overwhelming frustration of my own helplessness. Each time, the faceless assailant would strike, and the vision would end with Ian's lifeless body at my feet, leaving me with a sense of profound loss and guilt that echoed through my waking hours. Night after night, the nightmare persisted, a relentless tormentor of my fragile peace. I yearned to unravel the mystery, to uncover the face hidden behind the darkness, but it remained an elusive secret, locked away in the depths of my subconscious. The question of who had taken everything from me remained an agonizing riddle, one that I couldn't solve, even in the realm of dreams. In the dream, as the faceless murderer approached with a chilling determination, the air grew heavy with his ominous intentions. His voice, cold and menacing, sliced through the silence. "I will become a king," he declared, his words dripping with malevolence, "and I shall acquire the stone you carry, the key to my ascendancy." Fear and fury surged within me, a potent cocktail of emotions that ignited a fire in my soul. I couldn't let this malevolent force take the stone that was inexplicably tied to my fate. With newfound resolve, I fought back against the encroaching darkness. Summoning every ounce of strength within me, I lashed out at my assailant. Our struggle was fierce, an intense battle between my determination to protect the stone and his sinister desire to claim it. In the midst of our struggle, a surge of energy coursed through my veins, and my hand connected with the murderer's chest. A searing pain shot through him, and a handprint, imprinted with my essence, burned onto his flesh. My defiance had left a mark, a tangible reminder that I would not yield to his malevolent ambitions. Though the murderer writhed in pain, he did not relent, his thirst for power unabated. As Millie slowly regained consciousness, she found herself in the midst of an unforgiving desert. The scorching sun beat down mercilessly, intensifying the throbbing pain that pulsed through her body. Her senses gradually returned, and she became acutely aware of the searing heat, the grains of sand sticking to her sweat-soaked skin, and the dry, arid air that parched her throat. Struggling to sit up, Millie felt a wave of disorientation wash over her. She clutched her head, attempting to piece together the fragmented memories of her recent past. The last thing she could recall was the nightmarish struggle within her dream, where a malevolent force sought to take something precious from her, the stone. As her vision cleared, Millie's heart sank. Her dragon mark, the mystical symbol that had been a part of her for as long as she could remember, was gone. Panic surged through her veins as she frantically searched for the source of her distress. Her fingers brushed against a crumpled note, the words etched upon it cold and unforgiving. "The stone and your mark are now in my possession. You are nothing but a mere human," the note declared with chilling finality. Millie's world shattered in that moment, as the weight of her newfound humanity crashed down upon her. The stone, the dragon mark, they were an intrinsic part of her identity, her connection to a destiny she was only beginning to understand. Their absence left her feeling vulnerable and lost in the unforgiving desert expanse. Millie's determination to survive pushed her forward, even as the relentless desert sun bore down upon her. Her parched throat begged for a sip of water, and her weakened body protested every step she took. Each footfall sent tiny plumes of sand into the air, a testament to her struggle against the unforgiving terrain. With each agonizing step, Millie scanned the horizon, her eyes squinting against the blinding sunlight. She knew that her only chance of survival lay in finding a source of water. The memory of her dragon mark, which had once offered protection and guidance, was a cruel taunt in her mind. Hours passed like a cruel eternity as she trudged onward, her lips cracked and her skin burnt by the unrelenting sun. She stumbled upon patches of sparse vegetation and scoured the arid landscape for any sign of life. Her hopes soared when she spotted the telltale silhouette of a distant sand dune. Could it conceal an oasis, a hidden reservoir of salvation? Summoning the last reserves of her strength, Millie pressed on towards the dune. With each step, it seemed to grow larger, looming like a beacon of hope in the desolation. But as she reached its crest, her heart sank once more. There was no oasis, no life-giving water to be found. Defeated but not broken, Millie continued her arduous journey, driven by a fierce determination to survive. She knew that the desert was an unforgiving adversary, and every moment spent under its scorching sun brought her closer to the brink of exhaustion. Yet, she clung to the glimmer of hope that she might stumble upon a water source or encounter someone who could help her on this perilous path. Millie's resolve was unyielding. She was determined to defy the harshness of the desert, for her life had taken an unexpected turn, and the quest to reclaim her identity had become an even greater challenge than she could have ever imagined. As Millie followed the tiny fennec fox through the desolate landscape of the North African desert, her hope flickered like a fragile flame in the face of overwhelming odds. The fox's nimble footsteps on the scorching sand seemed almost surreal in the searing heat, and Millie's parched lips yearned for a taste of the life-giving water she so desperately sought. The fennec fox, with its large ears and inquisitive eyes, darted here and there as if sensing the urgency of Millie's plight. It led her through a maze of towering sand dunes and across stretches of barren land, its small form serving as a beacon of hope against the vast, unforgiving desert. But as the merciless sun bore down on her, draining every ounce of strength from her already weakened body, Millie's vision blurred, and the world around her seemed to swim in and out of focus. The desert's relentless assault on her senses pushed her to the brink of exhaustion. Inevitably, the cruel desert claimed its toll, and Millie's legs gave way beneath her. She collapsed onto the scorching sand, her body trembling with exhaustion, her lips cracked and parched. The fennec fox, as if realizing the urgency of the situation, circled back to her, its amber eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and concern. With a final surge of determination, Millie reached out to touch the fox's soft fur. It was a gesture of silent gratitude for leading her as far as it had, a connection forged in the most desperate of circumstances. As fatigue overcame her, she closed her eyes, succumbing to the overpowering need for rest. In that barren expanse of sand and solitude, Millie surrendered to the embrace of sleep, hoping against hope that when she awoke, the fennec fox would have guided her to the water she so desperately needed to survive. As Millie stirred from her fitful slumber, the harsh reality of her situation bore down on her with relentless cruelty. The relentless sun bore down on her, and her throat ached with a thirst that seemed insurmountable. She opened her eyes, and the first thing that met her gaze were the ominous vultures, their dark silhouettes casting eerie shadows on the desert sands. Their circling presence was a grim omen, a stark reminder of the peril she faced in this unforgiving wasteland. Dehydrated and weakened, she knew that her chances of survival were rapidly dwindling. Her throat was as dry as the arid sands beneath her, and every movement was a struggle against the oppressive heat. Yet despite the dire circumstances and the vulture's ominous dance above her, Millie clung to a flicker of hope. It was the thought of Caleb, her steadfast protector, and the love that had bloomed between them. She believed, with an unwavering faith, that he would come for her, that he would defy the odds and track her down, just as she had tracked her memories through the corridors of time. The hope in her heart burned brighter than the relentless sun overhead. It was the beacon that kept her going, despite the odds stacked against her. Millie whispered a silent promise to herself, vowing that she would hold on, that she would endure the unforgiving desert, and that she would reunite with Caleb once more. With that determination, she mustered the strength to rise, staggering forward into the endless expanse of sand, chasing the glimmer of hope on the horizon, and believing, against all odds, that love would find a way to conquer the desolation of the desert. Caleb's POV. Caleb tracked down the Dragonstone and found out that it had been stolen by a man named Darren. The two of them used to be friends when they were much younger, but time had gotten between them. The night was draped in a shroud of secrecy as Caleb made his way to the private party where he believed Darren, the thief who had stolen the Dragonstone, would be. The pulsating bass of music throbbed through the air, and the atmosphere was charged with an electric energy. People danced and reveled, oblivious to the storm that was about to descend upon them. With every step closer to the party, Caleb's heart quickened. He remembered Darren from a time long ago when they had been friends, before the passage of time had driven a wedge between them. But now, this friendship was buried beneath the weight of betrayal. As he pushed through the crowd, Caleb's gaze narrowed on the man he sought. Darren was surrounded by a throng of people, and the glint of the stolen Dragonstone hung conspicuously around his neck. Caleb's jaw clenched, his resolve hardening. It was time to confront his former friend and reclaim what was rightfully his. Without warning, Caleb confronted Darren, seizing him by surprise. "Darren," he growled, his voice cutting through the thumping music like a blade. Darren's eyes widened in shock as he met Caleb's furious gaze. "Caleb, what the hell are you doing here?" A terrible fight ensued between them, their fists colliding with a furious intensity that matched the roiling emotions that had festered between them for years. The dance floor transformed into a battleground, and their conflict was a spectacle that drew the attention of the partygoers. Caleb's determination burned hot within him. He fought with the ferocity of a dragon defending its territory, refusing to let Darren keep the dragonstone. Blow after blow, the battle raged on, until finally, Caleb's sheer strength and skill prevailed. He wrested the precious artifact from Darren's grip. Bloodied and beaten, Darren lay on the floor, defeated. Panting heavily, Caleb leaned over him, his voice dripping with a cold resolve. "Tell me where she is, Darren." Darren, struggling to catch his breath, finally relented. "She's in North Africa, the Sahara Desert." Caleb's grip on the dragonstone tightened, and his eyes bore into Darren's. "You've made a grave mistake, Darren." With those ominous words, Caleb made a decision he had hoped to avoid. He ended Darren's life, the darkness of their shared history culminating in this grim moment. The deed was done, and the dragonstone was back where it belonged. Now, with the stolen artifact in his possession and the knowledge of Millie's location, Caleb's determination was unwavering. He would find her, no matter the cost, and bring her back from the depths of the unforgiving desert. Caleb knew he had to act swiftly to cover his tracks and ensure there were no loose ends. After dealing with Darren's lifeless body, he reached out to a small, discreet dragon clan that specialized in handling such situations. They were experts in disposing of evidence and making sure no trace of his involvement remained. Once the cleanup was arranged, Caleb focused on the most pressing matter at hand, Millie's safety. He grabbed his phone and dialed Tony's number. The phone rang, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, Tony answered, his voice tense. "Caleb, what's going on?" "Listen carefully," Caleb began, his words measured and filled with urgency. "I found the dragonstone. It was stolen by a man named Darren, and I had to take care of him. Millie's location has been revealed. She's in the Sahara Desert in North Africa. We need to find her, Tony." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line as Tony absorbed the gravity of the situation. "I'll gather our resources and we'll leave immediately," he replied, determination in his voice. "Good. We don't have much time," Caleb said, his mind already racing with plans to rescue Millie from the perilous desert. In a surprising decision, Caleb also decided to trust Joshua. Despite their complicated history and the recent suspicions surrounding him, Caleb couldn't afford to dismiss any potential help in locating Millie. He reached out to Joshua, hoping he could help. Caleb and Joshua, guided by Millie's last known location, ventured deep into the unforgiving expanse of the Sahara Desert. The harsh sun blazed overhead, casting shimmering waves of heat upon the endless dunes. They pressed forward, driven by the urgency of the situation, the weight of uncertainty and hope bearing down on them. Finally, amidst the desolation, they spotted a figure, hunched and frail, lying on the scorching sand. It was Millie, her condition even worse than they had feared. Dehydrated and weakened, she had barely enough strength to raise her head as Caleb and Joshua approached. "Millie!" Caleb exclaimed, rushing to her side, his heart aching at the sight of her fragile form. He carefully cradled her in his arms, offering her the precious water they had brought. Tears welled up in Millie's eyes as she sipped the water, her voice a mere whisper. "Caleb, I thought you'd never find me." "You're safe now," Caleb assured her, his eyes filled with relief. "We won't leave your side." As her strength slowly returned, Millie revealed the shocking truth that had haunted her nightmares. "Caleb, it was Joshua, in the cave. He was the one who died, not Ian. I marked him as my killer." Caleb's gaze turned to Joshua, a storm of emotions raging within him. The truth, once uncovered, weighed heavily on their shoulders, but there was no time for resentment or blame, only the urgent need to get Millie to safety and ensure her recovery. Caleb held Millie close, vowing to protect her from any further harm, and to uncover the full story behind the twisted events that had separated them for so long. Caleb's eyes blazed with a mixture of fury and determination as he confronted Joshua, the truth about his identity finally unveiled. With a surge of power, he shifted into his formidable half-dragon form, his wings unfurling and his scales glistening in the desert sun. Ian, realizing the grave danger he was in, fled from Caleb's imposing presence, his heart filled with fear and regret. He knew he couldn't face Caleb in his current state, not with the terrible secret he had harbored for so long. "Caleb, wait!" Millie's weak voice called out, her hand reaching for him, her eyes pleading with him to stop. She didn't want more bloodshed, even if it meant confronting the painful truth. Caleb hesitated for a moment, torn between his desire for vengeance and his love for Millie. But ultimately, he couldn't bear to see her hurt or distressed any longer. He lowered his formidable form and turned to her, a promise in his eyes. "I'll take care of you, Millie," he vowed, his voice filled with unwavering determination. "No matter what happens, you'll be safe with me." Meanwhile, Tony raced after Ian, determined to bring him to justice and uncover the full extent of the deception that had plagued their lives. The desert sands bore witness to a tumultuous chase, with the fate of everyone involved hanging in the balance. I lay in the sterile hospital room, my fingers idly toying with the crisp white sheets that felt too rough against my skin. Caleb, my ever-protective mate, sat beside me, his eyes mirroring the anxiety that churned within me. We were both anxious, waiting for the results of a procedure that would determine the course of our future. The surgery to reinsert the mystical stone into my body had been a risky endeavor. It offered the promise of awakening my dormant powers, but it also carried the looming threat of rejection. My heart raced with uncertainty as I pondered the stakes involved. Caleb's reassuring grip on my hand brought a flicker of solace. It was a silent pledge of his unwavering support and a reminder that we were in this together. Love shone in his eyes, and it fortified me. A physician entered the room, bearing a small, ornate box. Within it rested the mystical stone, purified and prepared for its reintegration into my body. I took a deep breath, my anxiety palpable, and signaled my readiness to the physician. The procedure was swift and delicate, and as the stone settled back into my being, I felt a surge of energy ripple through me. Time seemed to slow as Caleb and I anxiously waited for any signs of rejection or discomfort. Every second felt like an eternity, and we held our collective breath, praying for a positive outcome. I could hardly believe the transformation in Caleb's behavior. Once distant and aloof, he had now become a constant presence by my side, his concern for my well-being palpable in every gesture and word. From the moment I woke up until I fell asleep, Caleb was there, ensuring I took my medications on time and following every dietary restriction to the letter. He anticipated my needs before I could voice them, fetching water when my throat felt dry or adjusting the room's temperature when I shivered. But his care extended far beyond the physical aspects of my recovery. Caleb offered unwavering emotional support. He listened patiently to my fears and anxieties, holding me when tears threatened to overwhelm me. His calming presence was my anchor in the storm of uncertainty. Our bond had deepened during these trying times, and Caleb's love and concern were now more evident than ever. He had become my rock, my protector, my confidant. I couldn't help but feel profoundly grateful for his newfound devotion, and I knew I couldn't have faced this challenging journey without him by my side. As I lay there, recovering, I couldn't help but ponder the profound connection that had developed between Caleb and me. His constant care and unwavering support had given me hope that he might have developed feelings for me beyond the bonds of duty and guilt. Yet, a lingering doubt gnawed at the edges of my heart. I couldn't shake the fear that Caleb's kindness might be driven by a sense of guilt from our shared past, rather than a genuine affection that mirrored my own. I longed for his love, his desire, but I hesitated to voice these feelings aloud, afraid that my vulnerability might push him away. Every stolen glance, every tender touch, and every reassuring word he offered fueled my hopes. I yearned to believe that what we shared was more than just a sense of obligation, that there was a spark of something deeper between us. Still, I couldn't be sure, and the uncertainty gnawed at my soul, leaving me torn between my longing for him and my fear of pushing him away. I sat up on the bed, trying to ease my pain a little, when Caleb approached me with a sincere look in his eyes. My heart pounded in my chest as he began to speak. "Millie," he started, his voice steady and earnest, "I need you to know something. These feelings I have for you, they're not just because of our shared past. I've come to love the person you are now, the strength and resilience you've shown. I love you, not just for what was, but for who you are today." I blinked, taken aback by his admission. For so long, I had hoped to hear those words, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of skepticism. "Caleb, are you sure?" I asked cautiously. "I mean, you've been so distant, and I didn't know if—" He cut me off gently, reaching out to hold my hand. "I understand your doubts, Millie, and I'm sorry for how I've been. I promise you, my feelings are genuine. I want to treat you better, to show you the care and love you deserve." His words began to melt away my reservations. The sincerity in his eyes was undeniable, and I felt a warmth spreading through my chest. Tears welled up as I finally allowed myself to believe. "I love you too, Caleb," I confessed, my voice trembling with emotion. And as our lips met in a passionate kiss, I knew that our shared past had indeed led us to this beautiful moment of love and acceptance. As Caleb and I shared that heartfelt moment, the world seemed to fade away, and it was just the two of us. However, our bliss was abruptly interrupted by Celine's voice, who had chosen an inconvenient time for her entrance. "Well, look who we have here," Celine chimed in teasingly, raising an eyebrow as she leaned against the doorway. "Caught you two in a rather intimate moment, didn't I?" My cheeks flushed with embarrassment, and I instinctively pulled away from Caleb, my heart racing. Caleb, though, appeared unamused and protective, his eyes fixed on Celine. "Celine," he said firmly, "we'd appreciate some privacy." Celine waved her hand dismissively, but couldn't hide the hint of amusement in her eyes. "Oh, come on, big brother, don't be such a spoil sport." Caleb sighed and shook his head, clearly not in the mood for Celine's playful teasing. "Just go," he said firmly. With a theatrical sigh and a wink in my direction, Celine finally left the room, leaving us in peace. However, my embarrassment lingered, and I needed a moment to collect myself. I excused myself and headed to the bathroom, closing the door behind me. As I stood in front of the mirror, I couldn't help but replay Caleb's confession in my mind. It filled me with joy and warmth, but I also couldn't ignore the subtle changes in our connection, since the stone had been reinserted into my body. It was as if a veil had been drawn over some of our shared memories and emotions, leaving me with a sense of unease. Despite these worries, I decided to focus on the happiness that Caleb's confession had brought me. I couldn't let doubts cloud this precious moment. So I took a deep breath, splashed some cold water on my face, and resolved to enjoy this newfound closeness. When I returned to the room, I was surprised to find it empty. Caleb had left without a word, and I couldn't help but wonder where he had gone and whether something bad had happened again. I quietly made my way to the garden, my curiosity piqued by the hushed voices of Caleb and Celine. Hidden behind a trellis, I listened to their conversation, feeling a pang of guilt for eavesdropping, but the urgency of their words compelled me to stay. The council's decision. Caleb's voice was laced with frustration and anxiety. Celine's voice, softer in contrast, replied, "But why, Caleb? You've done everything in your power to protect the Dragonstone and Millie. You've been a great leader." Caleb let out a heavy sigh, his footsteps echoing on the garden path. "It's not that simple, Celine. The council is pushing for a new Dragon King. They believe that I've failed to keep the stones safe." My heart sank as I absorbed his words. They were talking about stripping Caleb of his authority as Dragon King. I couldn't imagine how much this decision must have weighed on him. "But you've been doing everything you can," Celine protested. "And Millie, she's your mate. They can't just take her away from you." Caleb's voice was tinged with helplessness. "I've tried to explain, Celine. Without concrete proof of Ian's deceit, the council won't listen. They're convinced I'm hiding something." As I heard Caleb's words, I realized the gravity of the situation. The council's actions could tear us apart, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing Caleb, especially now that our relationship had taken such a positive turn. I took a deep breath, deciding it was time to reveal myself and join the conversation. But before I could step out from my hiding place, I heard Celine's voice again, her tone filled with determination. "We won't let them do this, Caleb. We'll find a way to prove your innocence. You can't lose your position, and Millie can't be taken from you." Their voices faded as they continued talking, planning their next steps. I remained hidden, my heart heavy with worry for Caleb, but also touched by the loyalty and determination of those who cared for us. We were facing a daunting challenge, but together we would find a way to protect our future. I couldn't stand idly by any longer, my presence concealed in the shadows of the garden. Stepping out into the moonlight, I made my presence known, joining Caleb and Celine in their intense discussion. "Maybe," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "we could use the marking I left on Ian as proof. It's unique, and I doubt anyone else could have done it." Caleb turned his gaze towards me, his eyes reflecting a mix of emotions. "Millie, I appreciate your willingness to help, but how do we prove that you were the one who marked him? There's no way to confirm it." I felt a twinge of frustration, understanding the difficulty of the situation. Proving my involvement without concrete evidence was a challenge we couldn't easily overcome. Celine, ever the optimist, chimed in. "What if we investigate further, interview those who knew Ian? Maybe someone noticed the marking after your encounter." Caleb nodded, his expression pensive. "It's worth a try, but we have to be cautious. We can't afford to make any mistakes. The council will be watching closely." I nodded in agreement, my determination fueled by the urgency of our mission. We might not have all the answers now, but we had each other, and together we would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the weight of our uncertain future settled upon us, Caleb and I huddled closer, our hearts heavy with the impending threat. The moon cast a silvery glow on the garden, a stark contrast to the darkness of our worries. Caleb's voice was resolute as he spoke, his fingers intertwined with mine. "Millie, if it comes to that, if I'm dethroned and our safety is compromised, we'll go on the run. We can't risk losing you." Celine, always resourceful, chimed in. "I'll prepare for that scenario. I'll pack essentials, find us an untraceable car, and make sure we're ready to disappear if needed." I swallowed hard, the reality of our situation sinking in. "But Caleb, what about your position, your people?" Caleb's eyes bore into mine, his love and determination unwavering. "My love, you are my priority. I won't let anyone take you away from me. Our bond is stronger than any title or duty." I nodded, my trust in him absolute. Together, we would face whatever challenges lay ahead, for our love was a force that could not be easily broken. Caleb's voice held a tinge of frustration as he explained the grim situation to me. "Millie, if the council strips me of my authority, they'll likely lock me up to prevent any potential revolt. They won't want me rallying our kind against their decisions." I bit my lower lip, anxiety gnawing at me. The thought of Caleb imprisoned was unbearable, but we had to find a way to prevent it. "Is there no other way, Caleb? Can't we prove Ian's deceit somehow?" Caleb's brows furrowed in thought as he considered the options. "I've been racking my brain, love, but without concrete evidence, it's my word against his. The council won't be easily swayed, especially with so much at stake." Celine, who had been listening intently, added, "We need a plan, something that'll expose Ian's true intentions without a doubt. Otherwise, they'll proceed with their decision." As the weight of our predicament pressed upon us, we knew that time was running out, and the council's judgment loomed like a dark cloud on our horizon. I woke up to the sight of Caleb, moving with purpose around our temporary sanctuary. His face was etched with determination, and I knew he had been up for hours, planning our next steps. "Morning," I mumbled, my voice still laced with sleep. Caleb turned to me, a faint smile touching his lips. "Morning, love. I've been giving things some thought, and I believe we should be prepared to leave, even if I manage to convince the council." The weight of his words hung in the air, and I nodded in agreement. We had to stay ahead of Ian's schemes, whatever they may be. After a brief journey, we arrived at the council's imposing location. We were instructed to wait outside until the meeting began. Caleb took out his phone, intending to contact a council member for a pre-meeting discussion. However, his expression turned grim as he hung up. "What happened?" I asked, sensing the unease in his posture. That council member I was supposed to talk to? Caleb said, frustration clear in his voice. He's no longer on the council. It seems things are even messier than I anticipated. As we stood there waiting and on edge, I suddenly noticed a figure at the council table that made my heart skip a beat. It was Ian, unmistakably him. His presence sent a shiver down my spine, and I could feel Caleb tensing up beside me. Our confrontation with Ian was imminent, and the air grew thick with tension as we waited for the meeting to begin. It was clear that whatever happened next would have far-reaching consequences for all of us. Caleb's POV. As we entered the council chamber, I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Ian sat at the council table, a sly grin playing on his lips. I knew he was trying to provoke me, and I had to control my emotions, no matter how convinced I was of his foul betrayal. I needed proof, concrete evidence that he had manipulated the council against me. Tony joined us, his presence offering some reassurance in this tense situation. We exchanged knowing glances, all suspecting that Ian had played a significant role in undermining my leadership. The council members looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. I could sense the tension in the room, and I knew that I had to choose my words carefully. Members of the council, I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil within me. I stand before you today to address the allegations against me. It is true that I have guarded the Dragonstone and Millie with utmost dedication, but I assure you, it was for the safety of our kind. Ian couldn't resist interjecting, his words dripping with sarcasm. Safety, Caleb? Or perhaps you were just keeping them for yourself, as your personal treasures. I clenched my fists beneath the table, refusing to rise to his bait. I have always acted in the best interests of our clan. However, if you have evidence to the contrary, I welcome it. Let us investigate this matter thoroughly and fairly. The council members exchanged glances, and I knew that their decision hung in the balance. This was a battle not just for my leadership, but for Millie's safety and the future of our clan. As I stood before them, their accusations weighing heavily on my shoulders, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The council believed that my feelings for Millie were clouding my judgment, and they were ready to strip me of my title as Dragon King. But I couldn't let that happen, not when Millie's safety was at stake. One of the council members, a stern-faced elder, spoke up, his voice laced with authority. Caleb, you have failed in your duty to protect the Dragonstone. It is currently within Millie, and your attachment to her is compromising your judgment. I took a deep breath, knowing that this was the moment to defend not only my position, but Millie's life. Council members, I understand your concerns, but I must emphasize that the Dragonstone can only be safeguarded through the mate bond I share with Millie. Removing the stone from her could have fatal consequences. There was a murmur of dissent among the council members. They exchanged uncertain glances, torn between their duty and the potential consequences of their decision. Another council member, a woman known for her wisdom, spoke up. Caleb, we do not take this decision lightly. We fear for the safety of our clan, but we also understand the importance of the Dragonstone. Can you assure us that your bond with Millie will not cloud your judgment in crucial matters? I nodded firmly. I give you my word that I will do everything in my power to protect our clan and the Dragonstone. My bond with Millie is unwavering, but it will not compromise our safety. The council members exchanged glances once more, deliberating the gravity of their decision. The fate of Millie, the Dragonstone, and my leadership hung in the balance, and I could only hope that reason and wisdom would guide their final choice. The council's decision hit me like a physical blow, a fierce surge of anger and frustration coursing through my veins. Ian, the traitor who had caused so much chaos, was to become the next Dragon King. It was an injustice I couldn't bear. But there was no time for outrage. I knew we had to act swiftly to protect Millie and ourselves. As the council members moved to enforce their decision, Tony stepped forward, a determined look in his eyes. With a wave of his hand, he conjured a thick mist that enveloped us, shrouding our escape. I took Millie's hand, my grip firm and reassuring, and nodded to Tony in gratitude. We moved quickly through the swirling mist, Tony leading the way with his uncanny ability to navigate within it. The council's shouts and demands faded into the distance as we made our escape. Outside, the cool night air hit me like a welcome embrace. We were free for the moment, at least. My anger still burned, but it was tempered by the relief of having Millie by my side, safe and sound. We couldn't stay here. We needed a plan, a strategy to confront Ian and the council's decision. As we disappeared into the darkness, I couldn't help but wonder how we would reclaim what was rightfully ours and ensure a future where Millie was protected and justice prevailed. We had managed to put some distance between us and the council, but the uncertainty of our future weighed heavily on both of us. As we checked into a cozy bed and breakfast in a small town in Kansas, I could see the distress in Millie's eyes. She had been thrust into a world of dragons, politics, and danger, and it was overwhelming. Sitting in our room, I took Millie's trembling hands in mine, my touch gentle and reassuring. "We're safe for now," I said softly, trying to ease her anxiety. "I promise you, we'll seek help from trusted allies and my uncle. We won't let Ian and the council take what's rightfully ours." Millie nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. "I trust you, Caleb, but it's all so much to take in." I moved closer, wrapping my arms around her, holding her close. "I know, my love," I whispered, "but we'll face this together, just like we always have. And we'll find a way to prove the truth and protect the Dragonstone." She buried her face in my chest, seeking comfort in my embrace. We were far from our home and the life we had known, but as long as we had each other, we had hope. As Millie drifted into a much-needed sleep, the rest of us gathered in a hushed conversation. My uncle's voice was a lifeline in these uncertain times, and I knew I could trust his counsel. I dialed his number, and after a few rings, he answered. The relief in his voice was palpable as he assured me of Ian's betrayal. We discussed our predicament, and he recommended that we lay low for a while, giving us a chance to regroup and plan our next move. "Mexico," he suggested, his voice low and confidential. "It's where I'm hiding, and it should provide you with some safety. But be cautious, Caleb." I glanced at Tony, who nodded in agreement. Mexico seemed like a reasonable choice, a place where we could regather our strength and devise a plan to clear my name and protect Millie. My uncle's advice was clear, though, and it struck a chord. "Before we go," he said, "get Millie checked by a doctor. Make sure she's not rejecting the Dragonstone." I swallowed hard, the worry for Millie never far from my thoughts. "We'll do that," I promised. With our plan in motion, Tony and I agreed to leave for Mexico the following day. We knew the road ahead was treacherous, but we were determined to navigate it and secure Millie's safety. The days blurred together as we raced towards Mexico, the distance between us and our pursuers growing with each mile we put behind us. The urgency of our journey was painfully evident in my deteriorating health. A persistent fever had gripped me since our hurried departure from Kansas, and I couldn't shake the gnawing fear that my body might be rejecting the Dragonstone. Every ache, every shiver, and every bead of sweat seemed like ominous signs, yet I couldn't bring myself to voice my fears to Caleb. He was already burdened with so much, the weight of his position and the betrayal of his brother Ian weighing heavily on his shoulders. I couldn't bear to add my worries to the mix. So I endured in silence, determined not to slow our progress, even as my body protested with every passing hour. The landscape outside our speeding car changed as we crossed state lines, but my internal turmoil remained constant. Caleb's steadfast determination was a beacon of hope, but my secret doubts gnawed at the edges of my resolve. As we crossed the border into Mexico, the tension in the car reached a peak. The uncertainty of our situation weighed heavily on us all. We had crossed into this foreign land illegally, leaving behind everything we knew, and we were far from safe. Tony's resourcefulness came to our aid once again as he helped a few Mexican families escape, providing a small glimmer of hope in our otherwise dire circumstances. Finally, we arrived at a highly guarded villa where Caleb's uncle, Charles, resided. The imposing walls and security measures were a stark reminder of the danger that loomed over us. But within those walls, we hoped to find sanctuary and a chance to regroup. Charles greeted us with a mixture of relief and concern, fully aware of the gravity of the situation. As we settled into our new, albeit temporary, home, we knew that our journey was far from over, and the challenges that lay ahead were uncertain and daunting. As we settled into the guarded villa, Charles wasted no time in ensuring that Millie received the medical attention she desperately needed. He had invited a doctor named Edmund, whom I recognized from my travels in China. His presence brought a flicker of comfort amidst our turmoil. Edmund, a man of wisdom and experience, approached Millie with a thoughtful expression. His voice carried both concern and curiosity as he examined her. "Millie," he began gently, "I have seen many things in my life, but your condition is unlike anything I've encountered before." Millie nodded, her worry etched across her face. "I've been feeling weaker and sicker since we left Kansas," she admitted. "I suspect that my body might be rejecting the Dragonstone and the Dragon Mark." Edmund's brows furrowed in deep thought. "This is a rare and troubling development," he said. "The bond between a dragon and their stone is usually unbreakable. We must find a way to stabilize it." Millie glanced at Caleb, her love and concern for him evident in her eyes. "We can't let this situation worsen," she implored. "We have to find a solution, for both our sakes." Caleb placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We will," he said firmly. "We'll do whatever it takes to protect you and our bond." As the weight of uncertainty settled upon us once more, we knew that our journey had just become even more perilous, but we were determined to get through it no matter what. After all, we didn't have another option. As Edmund continued his examination, running tests and analyzing my condition, a heavy silence enveloped the room. I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of anxiety, clinging to the hope that his findings might shed some light on my deteriorating state. Finally, Edmund spoke, and his words left me utterly astounded and apprehensive. "Millie," he began cautiously, "it seems that while your body is rejecting the Dragonstone and Mark, it's also undergoing a unique transformation. You're developing new cells that are distinctly non-human." My eyes widened with disbelief, and my voice trembled as I asked, "Non-human? What does that mean?" Edmund's response weighed heavily in the room. "Millie, there's a possibility that your body is changing, becoming something akin to a dragon." Caleb and I exchanged a glance filled with a mix of hope and concern. "Is that even possible?" Caleb questioned, his disbelief evident in his tone. Edmund nodded gravely. "In all my years studying dragons and their bonds, I've never come across such a case, but your condition strongly suggests that it might be occurring." I tried to process this shocking revelation. "What does this mean for us?" I asked, my voice quivering. Edmund's gaze held a compassionate understanding as he replied, "It means that your connection with Caleb and the Dragonstone is evolving in ways we can't predict, but it also comes with risks and uncertainties. We'll need to proceed with extreme caution." As I grappled with the implications of this revelation, I knew that our journey had just taken a startling and unpredictable turn. My transformation held both promise and peril. As Edmund laid out the perplexing possibilities of my transformation, his words weighed heavily on all of us. I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of uncertainty about what lay ahead. It was as though I was on the cusp of an entirely new chapter in my life, one filled with uncharted territory and unknown risks. Sensing the tension in the room, Edmund spoke reassuringly to Caleb. "Millie's transformation might take a few days, but I would strongly advise you to stay by her side during this time. Your presence may provide her with comfort and stability as her body undergoes these changes." Caleb nodded, determination etched across his features. "I won't leave her side," he affirmed, his voice steady and resolute. Edmund continued, "There's another consideration. We might need to mix your blood with Millie's to facilitate the transformation process. It could help her body adapt to the changes more smoothly." Caleb's commitment to my well-being was unwavering as he replied, "Whatever it takes to help her, I'm willing to do it." After the doctor and the rest of our group left the room, Caleb settled in beside me, his warmth and presence a comforting anchor in this storm of uncertainty. Together, we faced the unknown, determined to navigate this uncharted path and emerge stronger on the other side. As I closed my eyes, I found solace in his embrace, grateful that he was there to share this challenging journey with me. After 3 days of rest and recovery, I could feel the effects of the Dragonstone slowly subsiding within me. Caleb had been a steadfast presence, tending to my needs and offering unwavering support during this crucial period. As I began to regain my strength, a newfound determination bubbled within me. I was eager to leave the confines of the hospital room and resume my daily life. With Caleb by my side, we discussed my progress with Dr. Ed. Dr. Ed, his expression thoughtful, addressed me kindly. "Millie, you've made remarkable progress, and I can see that you're eager to get back to your routine. While you're on the road to recovery, I must emphasize that you're not entirely out of danger just yet. The Dragonstone's presence in your body is a unique situation, and we need to monitor it closely." I nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Thank you, Dr. Ed. I'll be cautious and follow your guidance." Caleb chimed in, his concern evident. "We'll make sure to take all necessary precautions." With Dr. Ed's approval, I prepared to step back into the world outside the hospital room. While the journey ahead was uncertain, I was grateful for Caleb's unwavering support and the guidance of our trusted doctor. With the weight of the recent trials gradually lifting, Caleb and I shared a joyful and romantic moment. The relief of my recovery, coupled with our newfound hope, made our connection stronger than ever. We cherished these precious moments together, knowing that our love was a beacon of light in the midst of uncertainty. Caleb's eyes sparkled with a mix of happiness and determination as he gently caressed my hand. "Millie," he began, his voice filled with hope, "I believe we may have found evidence that could prove Ian's guilt." My heart skipped a beat at his words. It seemed that our persistence and resilience might finally yield the answers we'd been seeking. We had faced countless challenges together, and the prospect of vindication filled me with renewed determination. "Tell me everything," I urged, leaning in closer to him. "Well," he said, his voice filled with a newfound determination, "a friend of mine has heard rumors of a video capturing the night you died." I couldn't hide my skepticism, but I also couldn't deny the spark of hope that ignited within me. A video? Evidence of that fateful night? It seemed almost too good to be true. "Rumors?" I asked cautiously, not wanting to get my hopes up too high. Caleb nodded. "Yes, rumors. But these rumors have led us to a person who claims to have seen the video." I thought for a moment. The prospect of uncovering the truth was tempting, even if it seemed unlikely. "All right," I finally said, determination in my voice. "Once I start feeling better, I'll meet with this person. We need to explore every lead." Caleb smiled, and we sealed our agreement with a tender kiss, reminding each other that our bond was unbreakable, no matter what challenges lay ahead. In the days that followed, our group huddled together, planning our next steps carefully. The threat of Ian ascending to power weighed heavily on our minds, and we knew we had to act swiftly. We decided to keep moving, staying one step ahead of our enemies. Caleb, Tony, and Charles reached out to their network of dragon allies, sharing our story and the evidence we had gathered. To our relief, many dragons were willing to offer their support, both in terms of resources and information. As we made contact with other dragons, some of them began to suspect Ian's true identity. The whispers of betrayal and deceit spread among the dragon community, and it seemed that our cause was gaining momentum. Though uncertainty still hung in the air, we had one another, a network of loyal allies, and a glimmer of hope that justice might prevail. The day of our meeting with the person in possession of the video had arrived, and a sense of unease gnawed at me from within. I couldn't help but share my concerns with Caleb, my ever-present protector. "Are you sure about this, Caleb?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "I can't shake this feeling of dread." Caleb turned to me, his eyes filled with determination and a touch of tenderness. "Millie, I promise you, we won't let anything happen to you. Tony and I are here to keep you safe." Tony chimed in, offering further reassurance. "That's right, Millie. We've got local allied dragons watching our backs too. You can trust us." I took a deep breath, allowing their words to wash over me like a comforting wave. Despite my worries, I knew I had to trust in their ability to protect me. With a grateful smile, I prepared myself for the journey ahead, leaning against Caleb's strong presence as we set off together.